I just gotta let you know that you've been so good to me. And I know that I can't do it by myself. I need your love so desperately. It's been times I wanted to give up, but your words, they spoke to me. Fill my spirit, help me to believe, but sometimes I still get weak.
I need you to fill me up, until I overflow, the keeper of my way. I need you to fill me up, I need your love always, so I won't go astray, the keeper of my way. I know you know my thoughts, I know you know my flaws. Your love fills up every empty part of me that was hiding for so long. The love of my life, now I've evolved. I wanna be what you want, and by your strength I'll break down every wall. I need you to fill me up, until I overflow, the keeper of my way, the keeper of my way. I need you to fill me up, I need you, I need your love always, so I won't go astray, the keeper of my way. Can I get a witness? If you hear me say, if you feel me say,
If you feel me, say yeah, 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 yeah. Let me hear you say yeah, 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 yeah.
I need you to fill me up, until I overflow, the keeper of my way. I need you to fill me up,
Lord,
I need your love always, so I won't go astray, the keeper of my way.
You're the keeper of my way.
Time is running down, I know your who should come in quick. They don't believe me. Watch me put down 4 chariots on this. That black rider calling you so you can perish with the sick. Red war coming strong to make you perish with the stick. White rider taking over with the arrows in his fit. All this death around you start to turn you pale cause it's snitch. All this trauma really start to make you well for the end. Cause you rather go through trauma than through hell in the end. It's a fact, we the end of times. As you blind when you driving on this narrow road, you can't ignore the signs. Don't hit the brakes, please hit the gas, you can't get left behind. Give or take, it's almost wedding day, I'm pulling up on time. It's getting late, gotta get that sin away, he ready for his bride. My oil burning in his lamp, I'll be right here when he arrives. By his side, standing in the light, it's real light, it's real life. Don't matter what you feel like, for you he kept them seals tight. I think these folks forget there ain't no grace in the end. You gon' end up with your hands over your face in the end. Time is running down, I know Yahusha coming quick. They don't believe me, watch me put down 4 chariots on this. That black rider calling you so you can perish with the sick. Red war coming strong to make you perish with the stick. White rider taking over with the arrows in his fit. All this death around you start to turn you pale cause it's stitch. All this trauma really start to make you well for the end. Cause you rather go through trauma than through hell in the end. I know you see what's happening, but shoot, it ain't that bad to me. No COVID, I can't catch disease, cause I know y'all watch after me. I'm really trying to say the streets, we're busy with these Sadducees and Pharisees who mad at me. We battling like Maccabees. I'm Jonathan, you acting Greek. I'm sorry, but I have to preach, cause time is ticking fastly, and all these folks still fast asleep. That's why we got the fast asleep. For mercy for these precious souls. The world was cold long time ago. We thawing out the afterfreeze. It's getting high, high, high. Might need another man, start touching it. They claim they like the truth, but they ain't bout up, loving it. I think they lost their love for this. There's false watching everywhere, so it might be hard to trust in it. Excuses, only truth inside his view. Say, boy, he coming quick. Y'all rap this soon to come. We at the jump, he still ain't done with it. It's hard for you to stomach this. It hit you like 100 kicks. We kneeling for the truth. They kicked us out like Colin Kaepernick. Time is running down, I know Yahusha coming quick. They don't believe me, watch me put down 4 chariots on this. That black rider calling you so you can perish with the sick. Red war coming strong to make you perish with the stick. White rider taking over with the arrows in his fit. All this death around you start to turn you pale cause it's stitch. All this trauma really start to make you well for the end. Cause you rather go through trauma than through hell in the end.
Mamlekhet, Kohanim, Kingdom of Priests, Culture, and Heritage Preservation, to preserve, support, and promote the culture, history, and heritage of African every people scattered worldwide throughout the diaspora. Objective is to raise awareness and support to assist those who descend from the ancient African every groups, scattered throughout the globe with their desire to learn more about their history. The organization's efforts will be to connect with others of this heritage, scattered through the world through education, research, networking, media, and charitable efforts. Exodus chapter 19, verse 5 through 6, King James Version. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine, and there shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, Mamlekhet, Kohanim, and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9 through 10, 9sb 95. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. For you once were not a people, but now you are the people of God. You had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Here are our customs. We turn towards Jerusalem when praying. 2 Chronicles chapter 6, verse 38 through 39 says, If they return to you with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their captivity, where they have been taken captive, and pray toward their land, which you have given to their fathers, in the city which you have chosen, and toward the house which I have built for your name. Then hear from heaven, from the dwelling place, their prayer and supplications, and maintain their cause, and forgive your people who have sinned against you. We blow the shofar, or trumpet every feast day and Shabbat. Numbers chapter 10, verse 2. Make yourself 2 trumpets of silver, of hammered work you shall make them, and you shall use them for summoning the congregation, and for having the camps set out. When both are blown, all the congregation shall gather themselves to you at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Here are some of the every Hebrew words we use. If If you are interested in merchandise, please visit our website at https://mamlekhet.kohanim.org. Please read if you are interested in becoming a monthly member, giving a donation, or becoming a volunteer. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Praise Yah for allowing you to come and join us for this set apart day. And we're actually here in South Carolina over in Myrtle Beach enjoying a family gathering. So we're trying to accommodate everything today. So you might hear noise in the background and stuff might just not work, as you know, we've been having some technical difficulties, but we'll make sure that we'll work everything out, as best as we can. Yah will give us favor. So with that said, we're going to start with our scripture. And the scripture is Haggai chapter 2. And it says, on the 21st of the 7th month, the word of Yahuwah came by Haggai, the prophet, saying, Speak now to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and to the remnant of the people, saying, Who is left among you who saw this temple in its former glory? And how do you see it now? Does it not seem to you like nothing in comparison? But now take courage, Zerubbabel, declares Yahuwah. Take courage also, Joshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and all you people of the land, take courage, declares Yahuwah, and work. For I am with you, declares Yahuwah of hosts. As for the promise which I made you when you came out of Egypt, my spirit is abiding in your midst. Do not fear. For thus says Yahuwah of hosts, once more in a little while, I am going to shake the heavens and the earth, the sea also and the dry land. I will shake all the nations, and they will come with the wealth of all nations, and will fill the house with glory, says Yahuwah of hosts. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, declares Yahuwah of hosts. The latter glory of this house will be greater than the former, says Yahuwah of hosts. And in this place I will give peace, declares Yahuwah of hosts. On the 24th of the 9th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, the word of Yahuwah came to Haggai the prophet, saying, Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, ask now the priest for a ruling. If a man carries holy meat in the fold of his garment, and touches bread with this fold, or cooked food, wine, oil, or anything or any other food, will it become holy? The priest answered, No. Then Haggai said, If one who is unclean from a corpse touches any of these, will the latter become unclean? And the priest answered, It will become unclean. Then Haggai said, So is this people, and so is this nation before me, declares Yahuwah, and so is every work of their hand, and what they offer there is unclean. But now do consider from this day onward, before one stone was placed on another in the temple of Yahuwah, from that time when came to grain heap of 20 measures, there would be only 10. And one came to the wine vat to draw 50 measures, there will only be 20. I smote you in every work of your hands with blasting wind, mildew, and hail, yet you did not come back to me, declares Yahuwah. Do consider from this day onward, from the 24th day of the 9th month, and from the day when the temple of Yahuwah was founded, consider, is the seed still in the barn, even including the vine, the fig tree, the pomegranate, and the olive tree? It has not borne fruit, yet from this day on I will bless you. Then the word of Yahuwah came a second time to Haggai on the 24th day of the 2nd month, saying, Speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, saying, I am going to shake the heavens and the earth. I will overthrow the thrones of kingdoms and destroy the power of the kingdoms of the nations, and I will overthrow the chariots and their riders, and the horses and their riders will go down, everyone by the sword on another day. On that day, declares Yahuwah of hosts, I will take you, Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, my servant, declares Yahuwah. I will make you like a signet ring, for I have chosen you, declares Yahuwah of hosts. Hallelujah. All right, let us pray. Oh, let me blow the shofar. I had it. Where's my shofar? Oh, there it is. All right. Let me blow the shofar. All right. Hallelujah. And we're going to actually turn to the east, which is actually this way already, and pray. Dear God, we thank you for everything that you have done for us. We ask you just to be with us as we continue to go forward in your word. We thank you for this time for us to be able to come in your presence. We thank you for technology. Even though we might have problems with it, we still thank you for giving it so we can still connect to our people throughout the four corners. And we ask you to bless them and bless this day, bless this message, bless the things that you have for people wherever they may be and whatever they might be doing. Help us to do the things you've called us to do, to be that poured out drink offering, that sacrifice, where we sacrifice our life to do the things that you have called us to do. But we know that you have blessings in store for us and continued blessings even to this day of how you've preserved us and blessed us. So help us to show our love back to you and our dedication and our service and our love for you and fulfilling the calling that you have called us to do collectively and also as individuals. We just ask you to be with us as the rest of the service. Help the technology and the noise and all the things that surround us just to work out, for we know that we're doing your will, and whatever your will is, we will also accept. We love you and we praise you. In Yahushua HaMashiach, we pray. Name we pray. Hallelujah. Amen. So we're going to have my wife to come give a song.
You can't see yourself. Oh, I can't. Oh. While I'm down here praying, God search my heart. While I'm down here praying, God search my heart. While I'm down here praying, Yah, search my heart, 'cause you know, Yah, whether I'm right, and you know, Yah, whether I'm wrong, and you know, Yah, whether I'm right or wrong, whether I'm right or wrong. While I'm down here praying, Yah, search my heart. While I'm down here praying, Yah, search my heart. While I'm down here praying, Yah, search my heart. 'Cause you know, Yah, whether I'm right. And you know, Yah, whether I'm wrong. And you know, Yah, whether I'm right or wrong, whether I'm right or wrong. Search me, ah, and search me, ah, search me, ah, search me, ah. 'Cause you know, Yah, whether I'm right. You know, Yah, whether I'm wrong. And you know, Yah, whether I'm right or wrong, whether I'm right or wrong.
All right, praise Yah. We're trying to make all this work, and thank Yah for allowing us to do so. All right. All right. Let's see better. All right. So with that said, we have a couple of announcements. We have our community Shabbat coming up on September 20th. So if you're still interested in being a part of that, please sign up probably by, I think it's Sunday, tomorrow, when it actually cuts off. So if you're interested, please sign up for that. And also, if you notice on the bottom, my wife will click on the website there with the Mamlekhet Kohanim.org events. So I was able to place a lot of the events on our website for the upcoming, for the secular, I would say, year up and through December. And there you can actually sign up and see all of the events for the following community Shabbats that we have planned. And that way you'll be able to, in advance, be able to better plan for a lot of these things. It's a lot when it's only a few people trying to get a lot of this stuff planned and organized. So we try to put it out ahead of time now as much as possible. And that's one of the things we'll be doing during as part of our workshop for Yom Teruah, is to, show people how to calculate the feast days, because, I don't want people just to be dependent upon me, because I got so much going on and I'm trying to do the feast days and calculate and get the messages together and, help people in the community. So I want to make sure that everyone is accountable for, making sure that they know the times of Yah's appointed times. So that way, people already will be aware, they can, plan ahead of time without actually having to have a physical calendar or something, because, we want to make sure that the more independent that we are from one another, the more that we can serve him wholeheartedly, right? So I think if people also, as part of understanding the calculation of the feast days and things, you'll basically get a better understanding of what Yah is trying to do in his people and why. And you'll be able to, like me, I didn't know anything about the moons and all that cycle. But now, I find more dedication or more understanding and appreciation of it when I see a full moon or, a crescent moon. It helps me better understand Yah's alignment with time, and that's what we want to do with other people. So we'll try to, part of the workshop is teach people part of that, because we're trying to make sure that people also, when people are dedicated to doing the things that Yah has called us to do in the way that he's called us to do it, right? We don't want to do it in the way that we want to do it. We want to do it in the way that he calls us to do it, because now that is giving him glory, right? Recognizing him, honoring him. I know, as we are waking up, we're trying to learn, and, there's things that we try to do best to start to get back to doing, what he's called us to do. And these feast days are so important, really, because this is really showing our dedication back to Yah, and it's getting us in the proper mindset to observe him and to glorify him, just like a Shabbat, like today, right? We're setting apart today to remember him, and it's basically a time that we're dedicating to him, just like the feast day. So, we'll start putting things out there. Also, in the other link that we have, this is the one on Eventbrite. So if we click on the other link on the website, going to mamlekhet.org, we will see there, you'll see, very similar on our website. So if you don't, can't remember the Eventbrite and trying to find it and you have some problems there, if you just go to mamlekhetkohanim.org and events, you'll see, picture of my Elder Mickey, and there you will see him, holding a shofar. And if you scroll down on that page, you will end up seeing, the same events, right? Just listed below. So we have to sync that stuff up, but at least you'll be able to find it. You'll be able to share it with your friends or family who might also want to attend. And like I said before, we're trying to push more of these things back to our website, because if something happens, or, something crazy happens with social media or Eventbrite or whatever else, you can always go to the website to find a lot of this information as well. So that's what we're trying to do, just making this website the major part of where we do our communication and knowledge and whatever else we're trying to do. All right, so hopefully that will help. All right, going back to the slide, you can see that, we got this community Shabbats there that's going on. And then the next one, we know we got the Feast of Trumpets that's about to occur, Yom Teruah, or Yom Teruah, Teruah. So, if you want to be a part of that, please come and enjoy. You still also have probably end of the day, tomorrow, to sign up for that. We already have 45 people at least signed up right now, and some other people said they're actually coming. So, don't take too long to wait, because I think some of the other people who's coming just hadn't signed up yet. So, And then the next one we have is the Day of Atonement. So we wanted to make sure that we have Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. That's going to be October the 2nd. So there's a sign up for that. And this is going to be the first time we actually try to get a facility. Well, we got a facility for us to come together and pray versus just doing it online. Previously, we did a lot online because, like we said, Yah is waking up his people. Those dry bones are coming together. But now Yah wants us to come together as a people, and it's so important for us to do so. So we have, been able to reserve the same community center that we do most of our feast days. Sometimes we don't put it out there online because for safety reasons. So once you sign up, you'll get the information of exactly where the community center is. And if you've been in previous times, you already know some of the places that we've been as well. All right. So, and then after that will be the Sukkot. So we got the Feast of Tabernacles coming up right after that on the 7th. And that will be a 7-day camp out. You can see the tents there in the bottom left corner. Some of the tents that we have on the campground, and it's it's a facility from one of our family members, Thomas Williams. I always want to make sure I get his name right because we have a Tony Williams and a Thomas, but Thomas Williams is the memorial park that was set up by our cousin Alvin Atkinson. Before his death, he really had a desire to make sure that there was a place for our people to go and enjoy the feast days, and thank Yah for his daughters carrying that on as well. So we'll be there, and it's has a little gate around it, so you don't have to worry about too many things there. And then we have the community center where we eat, and as you go through the picture, we'll go through the pictures. The next picture there, you can see. Oh, sorry, something's happening with my side. You can see how they did head wrapping. They did a workshop for head wrapping. So, they really enjoyed that. And then the next picture after that, you can see where we're in the center eating. You can see some of the facilities outside as well that we'll have. We usually have a tent shower too for people to take a shower if you want to take a shower. And they do have bathrooms there for, 4 bathrooms for women to do whatever they do in the bathroom there. So it's not all just outside roughing it. So, we still stay in tents throughout the night. And then the next one we have one of my cousins. She did a survival workshop for us, and had a lot of information. And you can see more fellowship when we actually did the eatings and lunch and all that stuff. So. Come be a part. We usually have it's like $10 a day just for the food, which is $10 for 3 meals is great, really. So if you're able to come and be a part of that, please sign up for that. I heard there was an issue with the sign up, so this weekend, like I said, I'm out of town right now, but hopefully this weekend I can fix that. So you'll have a little bit more time for us to sign up for that. And then the last day, which I don't have currently up there, is the Great and Last Day. So even if you can't come for the 7-day camping, or even if you only can come like that weekend, or whatever, it'd be a good thing to start to get in the habit to understand what that mean and the importance of it. And that's why Yah has given this feast days for us to understand our connection to him, and also to Yahusha, because all of them are symbolic of him and what he has done and what he's going to do in the future. So we're in the fall feast days about what he's going to do, right? Things that have not yet been done, and the things that he's going to fulfill. And if you don't have an understanding of that, we do have some videos. Go to the playlist and you'll see something about the feast of, the feast of the Bible. As well, you'll see some of the information about the pagan feast. So we went through all that last year so we can make videos. We'll probably try to cut them up a little bit better. But at least if you're interested, you can go up there. I think we have a shorter version and we have the long version as well. All right. So that would be helpful. And then, if you want to get in contact, with our people here that's local, we do have a Facebook group. If you want to be a part of that, you have to know somebody. So, if you know me personally, please just put up my name that's in there. Even if you're in the community, please always reach out to, you saw the Mamlekhet Kohanim email address, contact information, outreach at mamlekhetkohanim.org. Just send an email so we can get to know you a little bit more. Sometimes people sign up and we don't know them. So we, once again, safety now. with all the stuff that's going on, we want to make sure we have some safety measures, just not put all our information out there with our people and stuff. So, but we'd love to have you as part of what we're trying to do. And then next is still the video. Have been working on that, but I'm still taking some time with all that's going on. But I think it's going to be very helpful to people as to give better understanding of the Bible and prophecy and where we are, from a heritage standpoint as well. All right. So with that said, it's time for the Hebrew Heritage Fact. And last time we basically, the next page is just a regular disclaimer. And what we did last time was go through Dr. Jamal Hopkins, and he talked a lot about the Dead Sea Scrolls, about the the people of that time. So I also want to make sure that people are aware of his rebuttal against. He's not for I won't say not for the Black Hebrew Israelites, but he doesn't believe, from what I'm seeing in his old material. So these videos are years old, where a lot of this became popular. But he does believe that the Bible is black, right? But before we actually show that, Jude 3 also had an interview of why, a lot of what they were saying, African Americans, we believe that we're all Israelites, but they say African American Israelites. They don't say the Israelite part, but that why they have left the church, right? So I think it's important to understand that, especially in the context of what we're talking about today. We want to make sure that people understand, our dedication back to him. What does that truly mean? We know there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the world, and there's a lot of people that's pulling away from the things that's holy and not going towards the things of holiness, right? So why are people pulling back? Why aren't people, now in this age, what are the things? Why don't people, especially in that generation, young adult generation, why aren't they going to church? Why aren't they having a religious understanding? So here they have actually an interview where they're talking about that. And I think it's good for people to hear because we know that the history, a lot of us came out of the Black church, or from, they even talk about some of the Catholic church, right? And how they grew up. And when they grew up, what changed. So we're going to play that video, parts of that video. And then y'all willing, we'll go back to Dr. Jamal there and allow him to talk about the Hebrew Israelite movement to kind of put a connection there as well. We'll start that one, but we won't finish it. All right. So she's going to play that one here for us.
Away from the church is I think I would summarize it as the church that I've been to is more about Jesus coming in the future. Just figure out how to deal with life right now until he comes, as opposed to I need to know how to deal with life right now. And then when Jesus comes, good. But need help right now, and the church has got to be relevant for what's going on right now. So that's kind of where I'm at this point.
What's up, everybody? This is Lisa Fields, the founder and president of the Jude 3 Project, and I'm so excited because we have season 2 of Why Don't Go. Now, if you've been tracking with us for any amount of time, you know that we have a very popular series that we started last year called Why Don't Go. And the purpose of Why Don't Go is to sit down with young adults to discuss why they left the church. And the first part, we just love to listen to them. I feel like listening is an act of love, and we can't be good apologists if we're not good listeners. So the first part of this series, I'll just be listening to them for 4 episodes. And then we'll have Q&A where they'll get to ask me and my co-host Rasul Berry some hard-hitting questions about church and the faith. Season 2 is located in the beautiful city of Washington, D.C. I know you're going to enjoy the conversation we have with young professionals about why they no longer go to church. Let's get into episode 1. What's up, y'all? This is Lisa Fields, the founder and president of the Jude 3 Project. And I'm so excited because we are in season 2 of our Why Don't Go series. Now, many of you may have missed season 1, but you should definitely go back and check it out. It's when I sit down with young adults, young professionals who no longer go to church for various reasons to just listen and understand. We live in a culture that sometimes likes to antagonize and be critical of people and tweet at people, but there's not much listening going on and understanding. And we want to create a culture here, Jude 3 Project, where we're listening to people, we're understanding their questions so we can better engage. And I think the church needs to do that. So I'm going to be listening to these dynamic people. And we're in one of my favorite cities, Washington, D.C. I always say Jacksonville, Florida is the greatest city in America, but Washington, D.C. is right under that. And I'm sure these panelists would disagree with the placement of Jacksonville, Florida, but that's okay. You know, I get to rep my city hard, and not the football team, but just the city. So I'm gonna let our panelists introduce themselves to you all.
My name's Daniel. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
I'm Tish. Glad to be here with you.
Hi, my name's Treyana.
I'm Jasmine.
And my name is Dennis.
I'm glad to have all of y'all here to talk about such a easy topic, right? Not controversial at all. So we're gonna start off on a positive note. When you leave, in order to leave a community, you have to be a part of a community. So you obviously were in church at a certain time. What did you like about church?
It's funny you ask, because I grew up in church. I was churchy of the churchy. Middle school dances, I was a kid in the corner, you know, shouting and playing the tambourine. When I was in church, it did feel like a community. It felt like a family. It was a family for, you know, many cases. It was the fact that I could express myself in, you know, different ways as I felt like it, as I was younger. That was definitely a positive. And also it was the idea of just being able to have a group of like-minded individuals who at that time matched where you were. And that was the benefit of church. And it's all I knew. So that was the only experience I had. So I could lock arms with my other churchy kids in the corner of the middle school dance, right? And just have a good experience. So that was the best part of church.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Tish.
I think I'd have to agree with Daniel. I grew up in church as well, and I still have friends from the church I grew up, the Baptist church I grew up in. There are still people that, you know, I'm connected to today. And then, you know, the church that carried me through most of my adult life, lots of great friends and, you know, brother and sisterhoods that came out of that time. So it's the sense of belonging and the sense of family and the sense of communion with people that believe the same way you do, live the same or similar lifestyle you do. And I think those were some of the best things that came out of my experience.
Mm-hmm. Treyana?
I would have to say a similar thing. For me, I grew up in church as well, but I really enjoyed the community and the support that I got from my church. So that was definitely the best part, the connections and the community.
For me, I would say the best parts were the communities, or a sense of community, as well as the food. Oh, I loved the food before. Sometimes you get food after. Yeah, and I also, what also attracted me to it was the traveling. Like a lot of them traveled to different places and, you know, as missionaries, so they got to meet new people. So I thought that was intriguing. But I'll be honest, most importantly was the food. That brought me, because you go to people's houses and you also experience, again, more sense of community and sense of belonging. So
that black church fried chicken.
Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Yeah, and then somebody always has some really good baked goods. That.
All right, hopefully y'all can hear me. There's some background noise, but you can hear even in some of their responses, there's still some more responses that, you know, it was their experience being within church, right? So the good things that, you know, they found out of it was the, you know, trips and, you know, the social aspects of it, volunteer aspects of it. But, you know, one thing that I'm least missing is the relationship that they had, right? Where's the relationship or the spiritual piece of it that had them locked in? And, you know, being a youth and young adult pastor myself, you know, I was trying to always connect the two, right? Because kids are, you know, they're immature. You know, a lot of them not really thinking about doing the a relationship with y'all, right? It's more about I was forced to come, or my mom or my dad made me come, right? And then you have to try to figure out a way to keep them involved and engaged, but at the same time start showing spiritual growth. So we used to do like lessons. We used to actually take Bible lessons that had questions, fill in the blank and stuff, where we go through the different parts of the Bible. Actually, we started with the small kids, even in like nursery, where we just played music or did something, cartoons and that type of stuff. And they actually went to the like toddler, I would say, age, from 3 to 6. And then we had little small lessons and stuff that we used to do it on a very high level, but we at least wanted them to understand or hear the names of the Bible character, David, Jonah. Even my granddaughter now, she always talks about David, and she's she's only she's about to turn 4, but she's knows the characters, right? And then when we moved into what we call Kids Zone, I think that was like from 6 all the way to 12. We start actually talking even more about it, and actually having more of they were trying to remember Bible verses and stuff like that. But we still did the fun where if they answered the question, we gave them a ticket, and then they were able to get a prize at the end, right? And then when they became middle schoolers, that's when we took them through the lessons with the fill in the blank, chapter by chapter. And then we gave them a test, and if they, passed the test, then they will go and eat, have a little party for all the people who passed the test. And even if they failed it, we gave them time after time. We just put them in a different room and start telling them the answer. So, it wasn't like it was discouraging for them. We really was telling them we wanted them to see where their knowledge was about the Bible. And then when they went to high school, what the reason why we changed a lot, because when we got to high school, we'll talk about different moral things about the Bible. They're dealing with drugs, they're dealing with sex, they're dealing with a lot of stuff teenagers work with. But when we used to talk about the Bible characters or the Bible stories or the Bible situations or how to apply, they had no clue what we'd be talking about. So we started talking about Jonah and Noah, they'd be like, who's that? So we had, so that's the reason why we had to revamp a lot of our ministry for our youth. And then when they become high schoolers, they then knew the stories where they can actually apply it to their life. But you can see, and a lot of them, as they start to grow, like I said, I was over young adults too, from 18 to 35. So that's when different situations was coming around, families, marriage. We did marital counseling and those things. But I'm out that age between 18, especially when they go to college and came back, especially, they were lost, right? In between those transition periods, they got lost. That's what I used to find, trying to figure out how could we overlap those transition periods, because when they came back from college, they wanted to go to the youth thing. And then when they went to the, high schoolers, they felt like they were more mature than them. So they didn't feel like they were feel out of place there. But then when they went with the older adults, they were like, I'm not ready to get married and stuff. So they felt out of place there. So it was like always a challenge as they transition to keep them. And you can hear a lot of before we started a lot of stuff talking about it's not fun anymore, right? There was this maturity, spiritual maturity that they never, reached. Not some of them, not all of them, but, majority, they never reached, because once again, they were being forced to do that. And as they were getting more freedom, right, they were pulling away from the things of Yah, right? So it wasn't about the spiritual part aspect of it. And you really see that even to the day, even not just with young adults, but even older adults, right? That they are looking for a church that has a daycare, that has, all these different checklists of things. And it's no longer about them being dedicated to the things of Yah, right? It was more based upon what they can actually receive from the church, right? So now that we have waken up, and now we are Israelites, right? That we know that we're Israelites, at least for those who actually have woken up, right? So now it's no longer based upon, the idea of a pastor, and the pastor's supposed to do everything, run around, and it's now we're a community. So now in our community, where are we going to fit these needs of our people? Because even the laws, right? It had stuff, the sundry laws, to actually take care of the people needs, so it wasn't just the high priest or Moses, whoever, they had elders, they had everybody was accountable for everybody. And that's that transition, I think, that we're having problems with. So that's the reason why I wanted to show this, because it's very interesting how people have high expectations, still in that church mode, right? That church mind frame that, the pastor and these people, deacons, they're going to do everything. But now it's like, in our communities, what are we doing, right? How are we being able to help spread what Yah is trying to do as his people? And just not in evangelism, but also to meet the people's needs. So he had all those things already outlined in his word about, making sure that the Levites had food and clothing, and because they couldn't get a portion of the land to end up taking care. So we'll go into some of that stuff too. So, but I first want to show you how people kind of disengage from the social aspect of it because they don't see it as a way of life. All right, so we'll go back to the video.
Well, for me, it's very similar to what has been shared already. A big part of my social life growing up outside of the home environment was at the church. So one of my fondest memories of making friends or any form of entertainment was within the church community. So I think for sure that was the best part of church growing up.
That's awesome. That's awesome that y'all have that family dynamic is really important when we think about church, that it's the benefit of being in a church space. But obviously you're no longer in church space. So that means that the negatives for you outweigh the positives. So what were the events that led you to leaving church?
So that's a good question, because we were having a little banter amongst ourselves earlier about that. And for me, it really was, I had a feeling prior to college that was just like, something's not clicking, became much more stressful than enjoyable. Now it gets that way because I was ordained at 15 years old. So I was preaching, I was an itinerant evangelist. I traveled across the country, the East Coast, preaching, and at all the youth services. It was fun. Like I still had fun, but it became a lot more stressful. And when college came, and I had to decide what I was going to major in, I had a lot of competing interests. But one of the areas I was really focused on was sociology, anthropology, philosophy. I wanted to understand more in depth how the human body, how the human mind worked, because we have this soul. But that's only one part of us, right? Like we're competing against humanity here. So I was like, something's missing. And my pastor at the time said, "Well, we don't study that because it's witchcraft." And I was like, "Oh." Back then I was more subservient, so I was just, well, you know what? I don't study that because it's witchcraft. We're not going to do that. But it really hit home at that point, because when I transitioned to campus and I got diverse experiences, when I started, I said, like, it was all I knew because I grew up in church, right? Like the only traveling I did was to the conventions and things like that. And so when I got to college, it really became about experiences and understanding what was out there outside of the four walls of the church building. And that's what opened myself up. So it wasn't just that one instant of what philosophy is witchcraft or sociology is witchcraft. It was the idea that church no longer became enjoyable. It became stressful. It became work. I was a church administrator, so I was counting the money, seeing where the money's going, right? Seeing who's doing what, and then had access to all the background of the church. And so, when the pastor said people sneaking out late at night over the pulpit, I know they're talking about, Mother so-and-so's son. And so like the shade of church as well also played a role in it. And that's something that I feel like we don't talk about enough, is that a lot of people, doesn't seem like it's inspired, it's more targeted. And so all those different instances just drove me to experience life outside the four walls.
Yeah. I would say for me, growing up in church again.
All right, so he kept on saying it wasn't fun, right? First it was fun, and then it's no longer fun. It became hard, it became stressful, it became work, right? So you can hear as he went through that maturity standpoint, right? Because who's going to somebody has to take on the job of carrying the churches as adults, right? So like even when it comes to the things within the awakening, right? It's like who's the ones that's going to actually push forward to make sure that the things of Yah are actually being done. So I'm just making this comparison to what they're doing because some of us still have that same mind frame coming into the awakening, right? Because I always say certain people, if you're a hypocrite in the church world, they're gonna be a hypocrite as an Israelite, right? And then those people who are complaining about a lot of stuff, within the church, they're going to complain a lot of stuff about the Israelite, right? But those people who are working and serving, you can see, how they're trying to work and serve even in the awakening because, there's a difference. So now you can see with him, he was saying he was ordained as 15, right? So it was like a game to him. A lot of times when a lot of younger people are in that position, they feel like they have power, right? They have people are looking at them kind of like a star, right? They're going to these different churches and you're like, I'm 15, I've got this power, I'm speaking to the kids and stuff. But then when he actually start, like he said, open up himself, what does it mean to open up yourself? When he start talking about more of the secular educational type of things, which I don't knock, right? It's important for us to get education and understand those things. But even when I was in seminary, they taught about the difference between secular counseling and spiritual counseling, right? About the psyche, the soul, some of the things. But, there's no answer to secular, way of counseling for the psyche, right? So that's why they give you medicines, right? Because they don't have any answers. They're like, after you hit a certain extent, right, only thing they know to do is to maintain your, physical being by giving you medicine to keep you in a certain state. Where in the spiritual standpoint, we have prayer, we have faith, we know that Yah, truly know that Yah can deliver us if he chooses. But even if he doesn't, he can give us the Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit, to keep us going forward, right? So you can see some of those differences, right? And even I feel like sometimes people kind of in the middle, so they feel the anxiety of, worrying about what's to come in hell and, heaven and hell. But at the same time, they're trying to hold on to their secular life. So there's this battle, war, and inside that Paul talks about, the war of the flesh with the spirit, the carnal mind with the spiritual mind, right? That battle that's going on within a lot of people. And sometimes people don't even know the spiritual side, right? They just know the carnal side and there's no answer. So they're, a lot of time of dealing with a lot of issues, rather if it's something that they inflicted upon themselves or somebody else inflicted, sad to say, and they don't have that outlet, right? So now they're dealing with a lot of stuff internally. And but in the same sense, he's talking about a lot of the things now that he wanted to kind of look outside of, want to go outside of the prodigal son thing, right? I want to go out into the world to see what the world is all about. And a lot of the verses in Bible and warning of parents, like, don't do this, do that. He felt more suppressed, right? Kind of like Eve eating of the apples, of the fruit. She knew she wasn't supposed to eat it, and it's better for her to be where she's at, but she just had to be interested to eat it to see what else is out there. And you can see that happens to a lot of youth when especially go into secular universities. And they teach them about evolution, talk down about them, about creation, right? So now their whole mindset of us just becoming, that we've been purposed to do great things versus us being just some kind of monkey. Life just hit some kind of water and it basically created these little organisms and it became man and all that stuff like a happenstance instead of a purpose that Yah has called us. So this is what you hear a lot of with people, as you do evangelism and stuff. And now in the awakening, now think about what does that mean for us now, right? When we're reaching out to people, when they already have this fighting between the secular and being hurt from some of the past experience of being in church or not having a true relationship with people. So that's why I tell people you can be a Hebrew, but you can still go to Hebrew hell, right? Just because you identify as a Hebrew from an ethnicity standpoint, if you still don't have that salvation, then there's still an issue, right? But this is that heritage that's been put in us from a long time from the church. And I'm not knocking because I got saved in church and I think I really got saved. It's not that I just, did like these people did. I just basically had a true spiritual connection with him that actually led me to what Yah was trying to do with me. But now in the awakening, we're getting people from Mormonism and Jehovah Witness and Methodist, Baptist, and all these different faiths coming. So what does that mean for us now? So we'll continue to play to the next person.
all encompassing, so it was what I knew. However, when I grew up Baptist, ended up in very strict Pentecostal holiness apostolic church, and there were rules on top of rules on top of rules about how we lived, how we communed, everything. There was a rule for everything, and the older I got, the more I started to question some of these rules. And is this really going to get me any closer to Jesus or heaven or God? Like these just seem like arbitrary rules that are set in place to control. You know, you can't wear pants, you can't go to the movies, you can't eat pork, you can't do this, you can't do that. And it became overwhelming because the answer you got wasn't really clear. It was, this is what we do, this is what we believe. And if you questioned it too much, then you're getting put on the prayer list or you're getting pulled up in front of church to get prayed because clearly you have a demon or something's wrong with you because you're letting the world influence you. So those kinds of things started to really make me question the church that I was attending and, you know, the people that I was around, because you don't see these things. And then the other thing that I think as I grew in college and then in profession, it was, you know, how is what we're doing, which is, you know, a lot more ritualistic, I feel, than spiritual at some points, because I feel like there's a lot of people that are in church that are churchy and that are religious, but you're not really focusing on the relationship. You're focusing on all the other parts of church. And I think that where I was and the people I was around, we spent a lot of time focused on everything else and not building that person as an individual. You know, you can't just say God's going to bless you with a business and not point me in the direction to learn about entrepreneurship. How do I write a business plan? That's not being taught. We're saying praise God for the business, but we're not saying how do you get to that business. You know, and I think as I grew up and I got older, those kinds of things, coupled with the fact that I had a busy work schedule, kind of helped me ease myself out the door because of work and my travel schedule, I wasn't able to come every week anyway. So it was more about I'll catch you a Bible study or I'll catch the replay if there was a video. And then it became easier and easier because I realized I'm not as stressed and you know, because I'm not around you people that get on my nerves now. And so it was that kind of eased me out the door of the four walls, but I still love God. I don't feel like that hasn't changed. And I feel like in some ways my connection changed because I wasn't reliant on other people for my connection to God.
You had to get it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So for me,
even with that one, right? She talks about, you know, the religious law, legalism, right? And we know that talks a lot in the Bible talks about legalism of the law versus, you know, what happened after Yahusha came, right? But in the same sense that we know that every city, every state, country has laws, right? Laws or regulation not only to take care of the individual, but also to each other, right? So in some churches and Israelites, right, groups go too far with certain things. But the problem is that she was saying that she couldn't understand the relevance of it, right? Where did it connect back to the scripture? How does it connect back? So, you know, I feel like biblical literacy, right, is a big thing. She saw a lot of hypocritical stuff, right? So that's why I'm like, even among us, you know, if we're talking about, you know, even the Christian church is talking, what's that, boots on the ground song, and then we're playing the same song, doing the same thing that they're doing, what is the difference, right? Why not stay as being part of what they were doing then, right? What's the difference of our identity, our awakening, what Yah is trying to do for our people? What's the difference? Right. So there has to be a separation. And then, you know, what's truly holiness, right? When she's, you know, concerned about what's going on among in the midst, which rightfully so, if you got some stuff going on among you that shouldn't be, like the other guy say, called out. But those are the things that we should be doing in love, right? Love and rebuke to bring people back, because we know we're not perfect, But in the same way, as we know that there's people among us that's hurting, that's coming into not just the awakening of knowing who we are as Israel, but coming into salvation, right? There is some steps, right? You're a child, you're kind of like a babe, you're trying to learn what needs to be done. So those are the reasons why Yah, not us, Yah put rules and regulations and things to kind of, to help guide us to understand what holiness is. But in the world of today, anything about rules and restrictions and stuff, people automatically fight against, right? But how do we define holiness outside of that, right? What is holiness? What is set apartness? What is the things that Yah truly requires versus what we do? So, there's a lot of things that she said in there. And then she was talking about business, right? Like, I would even say this about a church, even in their defense, even though I'm not a Christian, in their defense, what would a church do with a business, trying to teach you how to do business plans? I guess they need to teach people how to be a doctor, how to be a lawyer, to all. And it's just amazing how we lost the sense of community, right? Like everything needs to be done through the holy figure of the church, right? Like we don't have any calling on our own to say, hey, maybe I need to teach something to some kids in the community, right? Outside of church, right? Why does everything have to be in the assembly, right? Like, and then the money that people have, they don't really compare with the secular sense of universities getting our tax money versus some churches. At least they get tithe money, but I know in the Awakening we don't get any of that, right? So it's like, when it comes to the church world, at least that's what the area that they're focusing on, right? There's so many high demands, I guess, for those people that's actually serving, and not a high demand for us to serve, right? So you can see that she had a big expectations on other people, but the people make up the body, right? So even in the Israelite awakening, we make up the Israelites, right? Israelites are a nation of people. We are that nation. So what does that mean for us? Right? How do we help people to establish business or establish the skills to be successful and not just look, everybody just seems like sometimes it's just looking for somebody else to do it. What is God, Yah's calling us to do as individuals? Even Yah had certain tribes of people like the Levites to serve in these type of capacities, right? Judah had to guard certain parts of the tabernacle as it went throughout the wilderness, right? Same thing for the other tribes. Everyone had their place of what they were supposed to do. And to make that body to come together. So the same thing with us as Israelites awakening now. What is Yah calling us to do to make us become whole? So we'll look at another one, and then we'll try to go to the other video.
I slowly backed out of the church, so much so that the person that sent me the information for this talk was like, "You're probably still in church, but it's still you'll still be interested in this." And I was like, I'm actually not. I'm not in church, but I'll go ahead and, reach out. But for me, before college, I was actually starting to grapple with these, all the rules, and you can't wear this, can't do this, can't hang out with those people, don't watch Harry Potter, that's witchcraft, all of this stuff. And I was just like, for some reason, this is starting to feel like a cult. And I was like, and I brought that up, and that was not the right thing to do in their eyes. And I was questioning, and I shouldn't have been. So I was just kind of like, okay, I was wrong. That was before I went to college. I'm like, you know what? I'm still a Christian. Maybe shouldn't ask that. But then I went to college and I joined a college ministry, which was kind of like a white evangelical ministry. So now I'm torn with being Christian and I'm torn with being Black, because being in the ministry, it was like, I don't fit here in two ways. And so now I'm all torn up, but I'm still giving Christianity a try. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to stay in it. So towards like my junior year, I joined a church. It was like a church plant. And I had a problem there that I felt like the pastor wasn't really taking seriously. We talked about it. I love the people there, and, he apologized. But I used that opportunity to kind of just slowly back out, and I just stopped going. So that was my 3-step, back out of the church for me.
Well, for me, it was going to church always felt like a.
So you can hear how she felt like, she couldn't ask questions, right? She had some doubts and some concerns, and she felt like she couldn't ask questions. And that's one of the reasons why we can see, because sometimes people in churches don't have answers to those questions, or they know the answer, but they know it's not going to reflect in the church in a positive way. Right, because me being a minister, youth minister, young adult, I used to get all kind of questions. People like, "How do you know this?" Now, because them kids used to be wide open to ask anything. So I said, "Ask anything, and if I don't know, I have to go and research it and figure it out." So thankfully they were open and felt good enough to ask questions, to be open. So that made me research more, and that's how I continued to improve on my knowledge and understanding my relationship as well. So it's good to have that open atmosphere for people can actually talk and and understand what is your faith, why are you the way you are. And that's why I always start with who we are as Israel, to understand first physically, outside of the religious stuff, why we do this traditional heritage moment, is so people can know and identify who they are as Israel just from the facts, right? And then it becomes the spiritual aspect of it. It's okay, now that we know we're the Israelites, what does that mean? Or even understand, even people who are not even Israelite, who are Gentiles, they might even try to understand, well, why is this prophecy, right? But until we understand where we are in this current modern time, how do we know how to go forward, right? So that's why I always try to push people to take the genealogy test and understand the history and your own tribes and connection and how that comes from Israel. But then she was talking about Harry Potter, right? Like, come on. Certain things we know are just evil. And I feel like a lot of times people don't take the same steps to challenge their own thoughts and beliefs, right? It's easy to hold anything up. The Bible, the Christian church, the Israelites, call them a cult, say whatever. It's easy to do that, right? To say what's not right in anything. But to say what is right, what are your own beliefs? That's the reason why it's important for everyone who's listening to this to understand your own beliefs. How do you defend what you believe first before you start talking about other stuff, right? Because it can easily get caught up in any cult and stuff if you don't know what you believe and why you're doing the things that you do. What is your understanding of Yah, right, and what he's doing for us? So that's the reasons why we do the two parts, the heritage part, and then we do the scriptural part, right, to connect people together. And you can see how she even struggles. So I went to what do you call it, PWI, primary white something institution, so college. So when I was there, it was a Baptist one at that. I felt the same thing what she said, right? I tried to I got saved in college, I tried to go and be, but there was something that won't there, right? Something that was missing. And then when I tried to go get them to help me go reach out to my own people, there was some pullback, right? It was okay for me to go and do little skits and pick on my own people. We had a guy named Ski Lolo, and I used to talk about how cool he was and stuff like that, and they laughed. And it did bring some of our own people in. But then I was like thinking about that thing, and I'm like, I don't see them doing the same thing to their own culture, so why would I not my culture, right? So I was even waking up then in college, 18, I think I got saved, saved 18. So I went out there and started doing Bible study with our, black college students, but, couldn't get people to come out to help us. So I knew there was like she said, a divide, right? And even when we look at Christianity, what is Christianity? Is it KKK? They believe in Christianity, right? Jehovah's Witness, they and other people say, oh no, Jehovah's Witness they're not Christians, right? Mormon, oh, they're not, even though the Mormons say they're Christians, right? Catholic, what is Christianity, to say specifically? When somebody said, what is Christianity? But in the same sense, when we come into the Israelite awakening, you can see the same thing. There's many different um, um, ideologies and spiritual theologies when it comes to different groups, right? You got camps, you got Messianic people, you got people who don't believe in the Messiah, you got people that are, Messianic Judaism versus Hebrew Messianic. There's a lot of different same thing when it comes to Methodist and Baptist and all Pentecostal and all that other stuff. You have the same thing, but you can see her talking about the rules and stuff again, right? So like, what are those things that's going to shape us, right? So I just want to kind of get that out there to just share some of the ideas, because these are our people, right? These are the same things all of our people are dealing with, and this is the current place where we are because of our history that led us to this moment. So where are we going to move forward, and how does that reflect on not just as a whole, but even each person as an individual. So I'm already a little bit past time, but I do want to at least start the next video, and we can play another one of these in the future. But this is the one from Dr. Jamal Hopkins, and this is where he's going to talk against talk about the Hebrew Israelites. Now, it sounds like they have more of the conversation around the camps and stuff, but you can see how they're going to broaden out across everybody, right? There's always this broad brushing of our community saying that, oh, the Hebrew Israelites and, everybody believes, that kind of thing, which I, don't think it's right, because it's like saying all Christians believe in the same thing. But I at least want to get you an introduction to this today, because as you heard her talks about, that identity was an issue, right? Not understanding who she was, right? Where did that fit in, and how she dealt with an issue with culture and her belief system, and trying to find a common. So us coming together and waking up as the Israelites, people try to act like culture is not important, which it is, because even in Christianity, as we know it today, it's more of a European culture of the Bible, right? Because we do, people, not we. People do Christmas, right? That's European. That's not in the Bible. Easter, all of these European holidays and culture that's mixed in. They used to not even want to clap and stuff. My son went to a Christian a school, and they didn't want them to clap his hands. He couldn't grow a beard. I can't even think of some of the other. Couldn't play the drums. The way that he plays the piano wasn't right. He can't play it in a jazzy kind of way. So I'm like, wait a minute. Even to a point they're talking about you couldn't put a hood on because what happened with Trayvon Martin, and nobody in school didn't put on the hood yet, but they're already telling them you couldn't kneel like Colin Kaepernick at the flag. And I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't sound like the Bible. This sounds like suppression, right? So where can, people now have the problem, like, where can I go and be free to be myself? But who are we, right? It goes back to, who are we? Are we the Israelites? Are we not Israelites? Are we a Gentile? Are we a Jew? Who are we in our identity? So I'm gonna play a little bit about this, and just to get you, because I'm fair and wide open when it comes to things. I want you to see both sides of the story. But think in mind of what those people were talking about. Now think about what he's talking about, even with the Israelite movement. I'm not gonna play a lot just because of time's sake, but we'll carry back probably next week. All right.
Hey everyone, my name's Cam Triggs. I'm serving as a special host for the Jude 3 Project podcast. So glad to have you guys listening in. Want to thank Lisa Fields for the opportunity. We're excited to be talking about a very special topic that I know many of you guys are interested about, want to learn more about. We've attacked this topic a couple times, but I think we want to go deeper to help all of you apologists out there to be able to have a reasonable response for the faith that's within you. We have a special guest, a scholar. He's going to be answering some particular questions about Black Hebrew Israelites. We're going to talk about this particular sect or cult that is really taking America by storm. And we know there's many.
So you hear him say, he started off by saying this particular sect or cult. He already put it as a cult from the very get-go. Right. And so that's what happens a lot in our communities. Right. As soon as people hear Hebrew Israelites, they automatically say it's a cult. Right. They don't even know much about it. They just hear other people saying it's a cult. So they already close their ears to it. Right. So I will give Dr. Hopkins, the benefit of the doubt. There, he doesn't, probably not today, you'll see it at the end where he talks about how all the people need to come together. We need to listen to each other. But usually it's the opposite, right? As soon as you say anything about Black people being connected to the Bible, people go ahead and turn you off. I even had a lady doing ancestry, right? One of my cousins, bloodline DNA, and I connected to her, and I saw she had some Benin DNA, and I was trying to find my family, which I told some of y'all that is connected to the Kingdom of Judah, right? The same widow that's on the map that people talk about is connected to the people that were called the Kingdom of Judah. I have cousins that from there, right? So I knew they actually went down to Louisiana, and I was trying to tell her about it. She's like, I don't want to hear that. You're his. I don't want to hear nothing about no Israelite. If you say an Israelite, I'm gonna have to, block you. I said, what? So let me share you some of the information. I showed her more academia kind of information. No, I can't. I'm not listening to that. No, I don't want. And I'm like, well, some pastor must have programmed this lady to have a negative response every time you hear Israelite. Like, shut it down. Don't listen to it. And here we are talking about DNA, and I'm her cousin. And eventually I just said, okay, I'm sorry. So I just want to make, and she blocked me. And I was like, wow, So it's just crazy how people are now trained to block out knowledge, right? Just like the woman was saying, about, her growing up and she was trying to ask questions and nobody, and they kicked out the church. That's what we're seeing a lot of how, I feel like it's the enemy go ahead and putting those blockers on our people, so we cannot go forward in the things that he's called us to do in this time, right? Like we have a accountability to Yah now, that we know that we're no longer the Gentile, but we're the Jew. So he already made it seem like it's a cult just coming off, and he's basically prepping Christians that's in apologetics, defending the faith, go ahead and prepping them to say, okay, this is the things you need to do in order to knock this stuff down, right? So they're already getting a closed ear of attack, more of an offensive position than a defensive position to say, is this true? Maybe I need to listen through this to see what's true, kind of like eat the meat, spit out the bones. But no, they're going ahead and like, this is what you need to do to have yourself ready to go against these guys. And these are your own people, right? So we'll play some more there.
Various traditions and tribes and camps that really have different viewpoints. But we want to kind of give a holistic viewpoint, and we're going to ask Dr. Hopkins some questions on how we as Christians can engage these brothers and sisters, care for them, and pray for them. So, Dr. Hopkins, thank you for being on our podcast with us.
I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here. Glad to be joining the Jude 3 Project community.
Absolutely, brother. Now, you've been with us once before, but for anyone who may not know you, maybe this is a brand new introduction to you and yourself. Could you just introduce us to who you are, how you're serving right now, and just kind of how you become interested in this topic?
My name is Jamal Dominique Hopkins, currently serving as the Dean of the Dickerson Green Theological Seminary down here in Columbia, South Carolina. I had the opportunity and privilege of joining Lisa Fields on the talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there may be some piggyback off of the conversation we're having today. I was first, had conversations like when I was in high school. I'm sorry, when I was in college, actually at Howard University. There were a number of, conscious community individuals. Among them were Black Hebrew Israelites of different stripes, different streams, 5% Nation, Black Muslims. So we had some colorful conversations at Howard University, if you can imagine that. And so I just really had, I always kind of grew up with a kind of an apologetic edge, if you will, defending the faith. And so when I was living in Dallas, Texas, a good friend, Bishop Jakes, actually had me do a couple of sessions, or actually one session for one of his pastors' groups, the Pisgah community. And so that just kind of snowballed into our conversation today. So, but happy to be here.
That is huge. Well, we're grateful for your expertise and your heart to be able to engage this topic. Can you talk about a little bit of your scholarly background on why you feel like you really bring this unique knowledge to the table that I think is going to be very helpful for us today?
Well, I did my research in Second Temple Judaism, mainly late Second Temple Judaism, where I was looking at the Dead Sea Scrolls, intertestamental literature, pseudepigrapha literature. I dealt with the collection of literature actually that came out, was unearthed among the Dead Sea Scrolls. And in my readings of the Dead Sea Scrolls, I saw that there were some key readings that I found pertinent primarily to the Black church, Black Christian community, but also Black Judaism as well, which has a particularly unique historical, anthropological, and archaeological contribution that I think people of African descent, should be aware of. And so I think that's fairly pertinent to the conversation we're having this morning.
Absolutely. I think in the title, Black Hebrew Israelites,
So he just said he's studied the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? During the time of intertestamental period. That's that time between the Old Testament, people say in the New Testament, right? The in between. where you hear him talking about Maccabees and them fighting the Greeks and all those type of things. He talks about the Dead Sea Scrolls, the pseudepigrapha, or the falsely attributed writings, right? So you start getting some of those books that we know that, you know, people way back in the day didn't write, but they basically took their name and they made up these books during that same period, right? All this stuff that happened between the, you know, Old Testament, as they call it, and the New Testament. We don't call it that. We call it the Tanakh and the Brit Hadashah, right? So there's a reason why we call it that too, but we won't get in that today. But a lot of stuff that happened during that period is very important, and it's strange that nobody, you know, a lot of churches don't talk about that period of time, right? Where a lot of stuff during Hanukkah, and like we talked about the Limba, the South African Jews, well, Israelites, as they told me to call them, how they basically left from Israel and migrated down to Africa, right? So like people don't connect Hanukkah to African culture, right? They automatically connect it to, you know, what's happening in Israel with Jewish people, right? So, but there's a lot of that actually that went into Africa as well, and how we're connected to those people. So he's saying that Black Judaism, if you called it, he said it's important for Black Judaism to know that. And most people don't even understand what Black Judaism even is, right? Especially in Christian churches. So what is this connection that is missing that he's trying to bring out, right? That there is some kind of connection there in the period of, like he talked about the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is the older text versus many of the Bibles that we read today. So what is he trying to pull out? And why is that different than what we're trying to say, right? So he out like there's some lack of awareness, but yet when we talk about some of those connections, people then close their ears and call it a cult. So it's not just who says it, right? It's not just what said, it's also who said. So he basically highlighted T.D. Jakes, so we know, you know, before all that drama that he has going on right now with Sean Puffy Combs, before all that drama happened, right? He was somebody that was looked up and listened to. But even he said that, you know, we come from the Igbo Jews, right? That he comes from the Igbos. They were Jews. If you've seen his little thing that he was talking about, and then he pulled back from that a little bit, even though he continued his study within the Igbo. So when we say it, people like close their ears to it, like I said, you know. But it's also only received by certain people. Even, you know, when Caucasians speak about it, or Euro Americans, when they speak about it, it's usually accepted, right? People don't even look at the evidence or anything, which they should say it. People believe it, our people at least. But when we say it, even if we have the evidence, people like shut it down. So it already shows you there's some biases to this information. And why is that within our communities, right? So and this guy's already said his quote, and he said, oh, no, we need to pray for him, but now we need to look at a holistic. What is a holistic approach against Israelites that have different beliefs and different customs, even though we sure share the same Bible, just like we do with the Black church, right? So why is this, you know, why is this an engagement, but yet treating people different that believe in the same Bible, but you're not going to treat the Catholics different or anybody else, you know, different as well. So I play about 4 or 5 more minutes. We'll play it up to 12:30, just to let you know. But I might stop in between, but just to give you an introduction to some of this as well.
Brother on the podcast can read Hebrew. You know it. You're an expert.
Yes.
Awesome. I encourage anybody who's listening, go and check out that podcast on the Dead Sea Scrolls. I listened to it. I was deeply encouraged by it. So it's well worth our time to dive into that topic. But to transition into today's topic, I just want to start off with some introductory information. Who are the Black Hebrew Israelites? I know that's hard to get our arms around.
Yes, yes.
All the varieties that exist under that title.
Yes.
But more importantly, who are they and why should Christians be concerned?
Well, you know, I would look at the history of the emergence of the Black Hebrew Israelites or the Black Hebrews. The idea starting from kind of a very earlier time. I know we see kind of the notion of people of God, primarily in Christian communities, understood themselves as the spiritual Hebrews or spiritual Israelites. This idea that there's this experiential connection, Israel coming out of Egypt, out of slavery in the Exodus, and that being kind of an experiential connection with African Americans experiencing slavery in North America, and this experience taking on kind of this identity among believers, mainly Christian communities, especially emerging out of slavery, referring to themselves as the spiritual Israelites. So it's kind of more of a symbolic kind of thing. But from there, especially during the time of racism among African American communities, the response from spiritual Israelites to locating and identifying themselves more as a lost tribe or as a tribe of Israel tribe, and connoting themselves as Black Hebrew Israelites or Black Israelites, spiritual, but also suggesting that they have some biological or historical connection. And so the emergence of that, particularly what we see today, I would say a broad understanding of Black Hebrew Israelites would be an identity movement, a movement that's kind of grounded in a Black nationalism as well, but also locating that with the kind of faith and scripture. And so this kind of conflation of varying traditions, as you rightfully spoke about.
Wow. Okay, and I guess in the American context, I know in some regards there's sex in other places of the world, but in the American context, where would you say some of this originated from? I know some a lot of times there's connections we make with Nation of Islam, 5%ers, the Moors, and even as we talk about Black Hebrew Israelism and the evolution of that. So any starting points, kind of huge movements, big historical movements that you would say that we should have paid attention to? This is why it's kind of evolved into what it is today.
Well, I would say the resurgence of the Black Hebrew Israelites or Black Hebrews come out of as discrimination against African Americans ramps up, and we see pockets of this. We see the emergence of the Black Muslims. During the time period where Jim Crow was rampant, and this was a response. The rise of the Nation of Islam, the rise of these movements. I think the resurgence of Black Hebrew Israelites today is kind of this. They're taking their turn, whereas before it was the Black Muslims. Now we've seen kind of a resurgence of the Black Hebrew Israelites. Now they're taking their turn, and so in response to discrimination against African and people of African descent, and in response to racism, this is an identity of how do we locate ourselves? We belong. We have a story. We have a history, and it doesn't just begin in American slavery, but it goes back. And this idea of going back even beyond Africa. So I understand, this group. Its philosophy, I call it a kind of a theo-philosophical understanding of itself, grounding itself within a faith context, a Judeo context, if you will, or a conflated Judeo context, and a Black nationalist identity. In the emergence of that, you have, I hate to say it, but you just kind of pick one, the Black Muslims, Black Hebrew Israelites. The commonality among both is that they are Black nationalist groups grounded in a kind of, or a masking themselves in a kind of a religious tradition. Black Muslims would be Islam, but they don't necessarily have a kind of Islamic tradition or a kind of an Orthodox Islamic tradition. Black Hebrew Israelites don't have necessarily an Orthodox Hebraic or Judaic tradition. And I think the thing that makes them common, and they emerge out of a kind of racism and a discrimination with people of color, and particularly in North America, is that it's about self-determination and it's about self-identity. And that's what you find common among each of these groups.
I love that.
All right, so we will go back to the slide. So, you can see how they're talking about, he said there's no tradition, right, for the Black Muslims and also the Israelites as well. But then that becomes an issue because as we go through, just go down, hopefully that slide would update. Go down. One more. So that's the one if you want to, your slides didn't update. So I actually had some updated. Might try to go back out and come back in. So actually, I know I've showed some of the stuff in the past, but there are some traditions that's not actually within our community that's being spoke of. So if from a scholarly academia standpoint, so why are they not including that in these conversations, right? They actually just say that we just came off the streets and we believe that we're the Israelites, and the only reason why we believe is because some kumbaya songs our ancestors sung, and now they have a identity problem because they connected to the Bible back in the slave days to help them keep going, and now all of a sudden they think that they are those people. They stole them people's identity through slavery. But then when we look here, so this is some of the slides that I did in one of my other seminars that we talked about in the past. You can actually see that this is the Jewish, right, virtual library. And here it talks about these people from Mali. Mali is Africa, right? West Africa. And it basically talks about how these people, I won't read the whole thing for time's sake, but talking about how there were some people that actually came to Mali that were Jews, were black Jews coming from like Morocco, and they moved to Timbuktu. And this is the Jewish website, right? This is not some black Hebrew Israelite website. And it talks about how, some was fleeing the Spanish Inquisition, that some people were Jews that was running out of Spain and Portugal because they were called Negro, and they ran to a place called, they don't say it here, but Negro land. You can see that on the maps, Negro land. That's where the Negroes from Spain and Portugal fled down, and they lived even in that area. And, I'll even show you some communities that are still living there today. But, this is somebody who was, it says, in the mid 1990s, however, thousands of so-called hidden Jews, why are they called hidden Jews, began a Malian Jewish revival in Timbuktu, Mali, many reclaiming their Jewish heritage. How can they reclaim it if they didn't have no traditions before? And it says in 1993, Ishmael Daid Hardrar, a historian, he's an historian, right, from Timbuktu, established an organization called Zakor, Timbuktu Association of Friendship with the Jewish World. The organization. So this is this guy, he started. So go to the next slide. So this guy wrote a book, right? So he wrote books about it, and then he was ran out of. He had to go hide. He's now somewhere in Spain, somewhere up there hiding because he came out with this information and started getting attacked by different people. So interesting, right? So if we go to the next slide, I'm just covering some of the stuff. In the Wolof tribe, this is like around 1495. Between 1495 and 1518, this German guy who was in Lisbon, and he started looking at some of these Jews, talking about these Jews that was living in the Wolof area, in the Senegambia area, right? Before a lot of the people Europeans had traveled to that area, and he starts writing about them, and he says that these are in this country and in Mendinga, there are Jews who are called Gal, and they are black like the other people like the people of the country. So where where did this come from? This didn't come from those streets of New York, no streets from Chicago, right? This is way back in 1492. Columbus sailed the ocean blue, right? Like this is way back then that they're talking about black Jews living in West Africa. Go to the next. So this is an international society of the study of African Jewry, right? This is not, and this is led by a white French, was by a white French woman last I checked, right? So she's talking about all the different groups of Jews throughout Africa. So why are they not talking about this tradition, right? Well, this is academia. They're writing books about this. They're making money. All of them, the Black Jewish studies, right? So next. So this is a map that was made by a white professor of Duke University, right? And he wrote out a map where all these different black Jews were living throughout Africa. Like, why is that not discussed? Go to the next. We're even talking about Hebrewism West Africa. That's a book that was published in 1931. And in the book, they got, talking about, some of their migration patterns from Jerusalem to West Africa based upon some of the names even of the African tribes that are currently even existing to today, right? So even in there, you can see, this is Only Love. I found out she did this. I just Googled the internet and found it. But on some of the old ancient maps, right? This is from 1747. You can see in that little circle, that red square, you can see where it says Jews exiled, right? On the map. And so where did that, you know what I'm saying? Why is this not discussed? So next slide, you can see CNN talked about it. Jewish people making movies about the emerging Jews of Nigeria, and they got awards for it. Books written about this. But why aren't the, Christian pastors and people talking about this level of information and just saying like these people just came, black young people got hit the streets and should start making up a religion or a belief system, right? So next, this is 1766, Duke of Orleans, right? He writes French Negro land, like I was telling you about Negro land. This is the Negro land on Negrita. And in the map, it says, according to the Idrisis, the land here about was populated by Jews. And that's right in the middle of Africa, right? In a place called Lam Lam. So next one, this is where Duke University book, I'm just going to read the part on the right where it has the pictures of the black people. That's in this Duke University book by Allen Godby, 1930, Duke University Press. And it says Lalongo Negroes, including Mavumbu Jew. So which one of those people out of those four is the Jew? How can you identify? They all look the same, right? So why nobody talking about that, right? So next, we're talking about the limba, and that's my DNA on the left hand. It says my DNA. You can see my closest DNA member is a limba, and many African Americans are as well. And you can see the book, that book down at the bottom. That's actually one of the elders of the Limba tribe, and it's written by a white person, right? European descent. The Limba, the lost tribe of Israel in Southern Africa. So why, you can see up Duke University book. And remember I told you about the Hanukkah, where the Limba tribe was? This is a map where it actually had the Limba tribe living in Judea, which is the southern territory where the Bible talks about of Judah, right? So they were the Levites and connected to the Judah. So that's where their traditions come from. And even PBS, UNC TV talks about the Limba, the black Jews. And you can see, President Trump trying to get rid of PBS might be a reason behind it. So next, you just see so many of these evidences, somebody actually identifying where Godby, Allen Godby, Duke University professor says, he says, which argues for the existence of a more or less recurrent Judaism in West Africa and in the place as those from which the Negroes were taken, is shared by others, such as, other people believed in this as well. Maurice Del Faso. But most significantly, it has been adopted by a class of educated Black Americans as a key argument to demonstrate that the Jewish religion is a traditional, I thought he said there's no traditional connections to this. It is a traditional religion of Africans brought in slavery to American continent, right? So I just don't understand why they're not talking about these things, right? And they're academia and they understand this stuff. I'm just a person off the street, right? Just learning this stuff. So somebody who's from Yale and Harvard and has all these degrees, why aren't they talking about these? Why aren't they sharing this with our communities, right? So next picture, this is another book from Duke University, Fula and Negro Fulas from Senegambia. So I met Fula cousins, right, that live in Senegal. So what does this mean? Some of them, there's actually a group of black Jews living there today. They have conformed to being Muslims, but they know their traditions are from Israel, that there are Israelites, and they call themselves Jews. Benamin Jews, I think they call themselves Benai Jews or something like that. But they write just like Senegal Jews. Just type that in, you'll see it come up. So next, this is Tenderma. This is in Mali. Even today, there's a group of people living in Mali that say they, from the history standpoint, it says Tenderma was once a Jewish community founded by Iberian, that's Spain and Portugal, Sephardi Jews who had been expelled from Spain and Portugal. They still living there today, and they're fighting over their graves and everything else. So next one, you got Adishak. This is actually the Christian website, Joshua Projects, a ministry of Frontier Ventures. So this is a Christian that goes in a website to try to find all these different people around the world that needs to be evangelized to. And they got Ada Shahak, right, in Mali. And what does Ada Hashak means? Sons of Isaac, like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they're living in Africa now. So why nobody's talking about these groups, right? So next. So this is just the beginning of the lesson. So, that's just amazing to me that, a lot of people in academia can talk about, some of the people that's on the streets and try to combine everybody together. But when it comes to the academic information about this, they don't talk about it at all, right? They kind of just sweep it under the rug and act like, there shouldn't be any discussions about this and it's a cult. Don't listen to it. right? Don't, you know, so it just amazes me that as you hear in the first videos, where some people saying they didn't have identity, didn't know how to connect, they had problems in certain areas, that now that the Bible actually speaks about our people being connected to the Israelites or being the Israelites, shouldn't that actually bring some comfort and some directions why we need to live holy and righteous and connect us, that's our tradition, right? That these people from generation to generation are supposed to be doing right, and we continue to reject our covenant that continues to get us in a bad situation. And the only thing we need to do is turn to him through Yahushua HaMashiach. Hallelujah. All right, so sis, I know I went through a lot. We only got a couple minutes left, but I thought that was so important for people that's struggling with, oh, why do we have so many rules? Why do we need to keep the law and stuff like that? But you have to ask yourself again, who are we? Who actually established us? Yah, right? Who's our creator? And what does he have for us to do going forward? And what are those struggles that we're having to be that totally set apart people, pulling away from the world to do the things that he's called us to do? Hallelujah. And so thank y'all for joining us. Shabbat Shalom. I didn't do it earlier. Mama, she's actually here with me at their family reunion. I think that they call me just like the regular family. So all my cousins and uncles and aunts and everybody that's here, it's just, they always make me feel family. So I thank y'all, especially since I lost my mom. My mom, she's always there for me, and it's a blessing. So that's community again, right? Shalom, cousin Hazel. Shalom, cousin Atkinson. Shalom, Elder Curry, Manuel Curry. Thank you for joining. Shalom. Miss Rosemary, thank you for coming, and hopefully your husband is with you as well. Shalom to him. And Aunt P, thank you for coming and moderating for us. Shalom, Cootie Parthenia. Hopefully Chris is with you as well. And Shalom O'Shea. So got one of my young adults up here. He can testify about all the stuff that I talked about before. So it's always a blessing to have people, as well as many of the other ones that's part of the youth ministry, P and everybody that's been with me for so long, and I've been with them as well. And that's what makes family important, right? So they can all give testimonies and talk about a lot of stuff that I'm talking about, and they can talk about traditions and stuff that we used to do. And it's important to build upon that, because Yah is moving his people forward, right? He's bringing us together. I don't knock my Christian experience, right? That was a stage that Yah wanted me to go to, because now as the Israelite, understanding my nationality as an Israelite, that's not my religion. I'm a Messianic, right? Believed in the Bible. I'm not a Messianic Judaism, right? I'm a Hebrew Messianic. I believe in the Hebrew Bible, and I believe in the Messiah. You could make it that simple, right? So it's very important for us to understand those things as we move forward, because, now in the awakening, there's people that got all these crazy, theologies and doctrines. So, I'm glad I was rooted in some of the stuff early and learned a lot of that stuff, not to be taken to the left and to the right, and miss out on the things that Yah has guided us to go. So we got to continue to go forth. Yes, I'm thankful for the laws too, because it helps us to stand apart. What is holiness, right? What is sin? What is iniquity? We got to understand those things. And thankfully, we praise Yah for giving us Yahushua, because when we fall short, it's not like we're going to get stoned, right? We don't have to go kill a sheep, a goat anymore, because Yahushua basically did that for us. So it's most important to understand the Bible, that it's one testament. There's no two testaments here, right? It's one testament of Yahushua HaMashiach, right? So with that said, let us go through the lesson, and we're going to talk about some of the called, right? We've been called forth, but the question is, are we truly dedicated in things that Yah has now called us to do? And that was the same thing that we had problems with even in the past, right? As Israelites, we can see that a lot of things that has happened is not a new thing. A lot of people think, oh, here it is. We're just coming together. The Gentiles are going to be brought in and grafted in. It's like, wait, read Deuteronomy 29. You can see what the Gentiles are grafted in then. What is the what's the people that actually can get circumcised? I don't know, I'm drawing a blank right now. But those proselytes, those that can actually get circumcised and said it should be treated as natural. So, like, why do we still get caught up in those conversations instead of talking about what y'all want us to do as a people moving forward from now, right? Like the man said one time, he didn't understand, the significance of the Bible in the modern day context. Maybe we didn't get to that guy. But one was talking about in the modern day sense, like he's dealing with situations, trying to understand today where the Bible is relevant, right? So it's relevant today as well, and we need to understand, and these are some of the reasons why I'm going through some of these things here on the screen that I'm trying to review to understand, so people can understand the relevancy, right? Where are we right now? what are the things should we be trying to fight against, and what are the things we should be accepting? Because Yah did call us to be that set apart people to do what he's called us to do in this time that we're living in, these last days. And we can easily see the darkening of the world, even this week with all the craziness going, all these distractions, again, it's trying to pull us to talk about things of people that's not doing right. But yet now the tension is taken off of us again, trying to seek him and do the things we're called to do, rather than get caught up in all the distractions, right? So if we go to the next slide, so we talked about this a little bit last week, starting off talking about the different horses and the red, white, and so forth. So, but the important thing that we're going to talk about now is talking about the rebuilding of the temple in the midst of this. So if you go down until you get to the slide that has the yellow header at the top, it'll be brown and yellow. But you can see how, those horses came and they were basically patrolling the earth, right? These people, and it's connecting the Brit Hadashah to the Tanakh. The Tanakh to the Brit Hadashah, right? Because this was stuff that was talked about way back in Zechariah. And then those horsemen, you can see them, very similar ones is actually in Revelations, right? So that's why I say it's one testament, right? How can you truly understand the significance of those horsemen unless you understand how they were patrolling the earth, how they were the spirits of Yah going forward? And you can see the same thing in Revelation, right? So there's not really a new understanding of what was going on, but back in the day, during the time of Paul and Peter, they already understood this word, right? They used to read it all the time. They didn't have distractions of TVs and a lot of these other stuff that we get all caught up into, sports and I don't know. Well, I'm trying to think of stuff that women get distracted into, but there's a lot of distractions that's out there now, right? A lot of vanity stuff, right? It's good to look good and stuff, huh? Fashion and do hours and for makeup and hair and nails, and there's nothing wrong with pampering yourself at time and doing that kind of stuff. I don't want people to think I'm over religious. As soon as you say that, people's automatically, cult indicator comes in. He said, "Don't get your nails done." No, I did not say that. I'm just saying that we get too caught up in that stuff, right? Like basketball. I play basketball. Go watch my children. My son played basketball. I play basketball. I watch the game or two. Don't mean I'm going to hell for watch. But then there's a devotion to a point where I used to watch hours on end of basketball and football, and never leave my couch. And then when people came to me and asked me to do something for the youth, I was like, I don't have no time. But then I started thinking about that thing. I'm like, I do got time. All the hours I play, sitting on the couch, used to play them video games, doing all. I have a lot of time, but I put those things before I put the things of Yah, right? So that's what we're going to talk about now, right? What is that line that crosses the things that Yah wants us to do, what he created us to do, and the things that we want to enjoy and do ourselves, right? Is there a line that is causing a problem there, right? So we can see here Joshua the high priest. So this is during the time of Zechariah, right? So during the time when he's talking about some of those horses and those patrolling of the earth and those spirits going here and there. So in Zechariah chapter 2, verse 1, and it says, "Then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, there was a man with a measuring line in his hand." That's interesting. It says, "So I said, where are you going?" He said to me, "To measure Jerusalem, see how wide it is and how long it is. And behold, the angel who was speaking with me was going out, and another angel was coming to meet him, and said to him, Run, speak to that young man, saying, Jerusalem will be inhabited without walls, because of the multitude of men and cattle within it." So you can see that this is a time when they're actually in exile, right? So they just got taken out by the Babylonians. The land was destroyed. The temple was destroyed. And that's where that guy was talking about Second Temple period Judaism. I'm trying to get that in your mind. So when they were turning back to build the second temple, they were coming from Babylon, and there's some other stuff coming along with them. So that's the reason why they changed their months from Abib to Nisan, right? You start getting months like Tammuz, a god of, the Babylonian people, getting caught up in the Hebrew calendar. So some of that is during this period, right? Right, but this is right before that period, actually. So, he's talking about how Jerusalem is going to be inhabited again. So there's going to be more people that's going to return back because of, they've been scattered, and now they're going to be, so there's that pattern again, right? You kicked out, y'all kicked us out for doing wrong, then he brings us back in, right? Kicks us out. He does just like in Judges, right? He ended up chastising us, and then he raised up the leader to come bring us back together again. So in the same way, it's foreshadowing of what's to come now, right? That he scattered us, just like it talks about in Deuteronomy 30, but then he's going to make us wake up to remember the blessings and curses. And then once we return to him, he's going to return those curses on other nations that came against us to bring us back together again into his land. So just read through Deuteronomy 30. I always tell people read Deuteronomy 27 all the way to Deuteronomy 32. That gives you an understanding of what we had to go through. Him kicking us out and him also returning us, even in future prophecy of Moses. But then he says in verse 5, for I declares Yahuwah, will be a wall of fire around her, and I will be the glory in her midst. So he's talking about that wall of protection. That wall is like he basically protected Israel with a wall of fire behind them, so the Egyptian people couldn't get them. So he's talking about that protection that he's going to have around Israel. And verse 6 says, hold there, flee from the land of the north, declares Yahuwah, for I have dispersed you as the four winds of the heavens, declares Yahuwah. So for those that's been Bible study, it's always important to go to Bible study, but we've been going through Revelations, and you can hear that very similar thing. I think it's in Revelation chapter 6 or 7, when it talks about the angels will hold the four winds of the earth or heaven, I can't remember, before the 144,000 are labeled, right? So you can see some of the similarities here. And verse 7 says, Ho, Zion, escape, you who are living with the daughter of Babylon. So, and we know that Babylon the Great, the harlot of Babylon, right, what's going to be in the New Testament, and that actually is identifying, most people say, with Rome. But we said that, we need to come out of those customs, come out of those things, right, flee from them, right. Verse 8, it says, for thus says Yahuwah of hosts, after glory, he has sent me against the nations which plundered you. For he who touches you touches the apple of his eye. So we can see, going back to Deuteronomy 30, where I was saying before, we can see how Yah said, we got chastised, but now once we fulfill that chastisement or start doing what's right, that now he's going to go against those nations. So you can see the same thing here now. That's why I'm just trying to make sure you understand that relevancy of going back and understanding when he's talking about, you're going, other people going to lick the ground, or that something about and lick the ground that we come from. Where I said one time it was hard for me to preach, but you can see that he has a plan, and that total plan, it links us back to that plan of salvation. For us, we just need to get spiritually right, and his plan will, we'll walk in sync of what his plan is for us and for those who grab to him. But for those who don't, that's the other side of the plan, right? So he says that they will be plundered for their, let me see, verse 9, for behold, I will wave my hand over them, so they will be plundered for their slaves, right? So they will be punished, right? The people who basically Babylon later does get in trouble and get mixed up. And it said that, nobody will ever rebuild the city. And even today, if you go, archaeology is important. If you go look today, you'll see that it's there and has never been rebuilt. I think it was Saddam Hussein was trying to rebuild it, and you see what happened to him. So, Yah's word still is in effect even unto today. And it's, when you start looking at archaeology, like Sodom and Gomorrah and stuff, how Yahushua even said that this is a sign of those people not going to repent, and they found the cities, right? So it's like archaeology is lining up with the Bible. So we got to understand, what does that line up for us as a people, right? In the Revelation, it talks about Gog and Magog. So Magog is a nation of people that's living today that Yah says is going to come against come against us, as well as come against Yahushua in the last day. So who's Magog, right? What does this mean for the day, to make it relevant to where we are now? But it says, then you will know that Yahuwah of hosts has sent me. Sing for joy, and be glad, O daughter of Zion, for behold, I am coming, and I will dwell in your midst, declares Yahuwah. Many nations will what? Join themselves to Yahuwah in that day, and will become my people. People got problems with that, right? Some Israelites say, oh, it's just us, no other people. You just said many nations will join themselves, right, to us, right, or to him, actually, not even to us, will join themselves to Yahuwah in that day and will become my people. So that's the reason why, I talked about the house of prayer for all people. I think that was just last week we talked about that, or the week before. I'm losing my track. Just so much stuff is going on. But then it says, then I will dwell in your midst, right? He wants to tabernacle with us, right? So that's when we talking about Sukkot, the feast day that's coming up, by how he wants to dwell with us. He wants to tabernacle with us. It's also called the Feast of the Ingathering, right? Bringing his people together so he can dwell just like he did in the garden with Adam, right? When he wanted to be with Adam because of sin, he had to pull away. And now his plan is to come back to his people. So he says, then I will dwell in your midst. So that's the Ruach HaKodesh, dwell in our midst. And you will know that Yahuwah of hosts has sent me to you. Yahuwah possessed Judah as his holy portion in the Holy Land and will again choose Jerusalem. Be silent, all flesh, before Yahuwah, for he has arose from his holy habitation. So it just shows you that he wants to, once again, just like he did, foreshadowing of what happened during the time when they were exiled in Babylon. He had this desire to still to be with his people, to still to be with us, right? But he can't just be among sin. He just can't allow us to do whatever we want to do, right? He has certain rules and regulations because that's what is set apart, right? That's what's holy to him, not to us. We can say whatever we want to be as holy, and probably me and the next person probably be a little different to what we say is holy, right? But that's our own preference. But he is our creator. So we have to form to what he desires, and that's that part of fighting the flesh, right? Fighting our own desires to do the things that he's called us to do. And why do we even have those desires within us? Why do I want to sin, right? What put that in me to have a desire to go and do something that I know that's not righteous, right? Based upon what God told me to do. He didn't create me that way. So what was placed in me to give me this yearning was hard to fight, right? And it says you're tempted by your own desires. What gave me the desire, right? So that's the reason why we have to protect our mind, protect our eyes, protect our ears, right? Because the Satan's always trying to put something in our ears through songs, through message, or in our eyes through movies, right? Some things we hadn't even thought about. Like now, some of the sin today, I'm like, I never even imagined about, there's a thing where the mothers and the sons are getting married. Like, I'm like, what? That's never even crossed my mind. Fathers marrying their daughters and they're supposed to try to make it legal. I'm like, what kind of abomination is going on now? How some people who want to be the what is it called? When it transvestite, right? Like they basically be a woman, right? And then they want to have the sex operation to be a man, and then they'll marry a man that wants to have a sexual change to be a woman, and then on top of that, they'll have a baby. So now the man is pregnant with the baby because she's got a sex change. I'm like, what is going on in this world? Like, this is just so confusing. So we got to make sure that we understand the things of Yah and what does he set apart as righteous and holy and acceptable to him and not to us, because we have so many interpretations of that, and it's getting worse as we move forward. So if we go to the next slide, it then talks about Joshua the high priest, right? Should be 1S. I got priest, but it should be Joshua the high priest, 1. So Yah is getting ready to start building the temple, and he's calling forth his people, his person, his manservant, to be a priest in order to cleanse, him and also cleanse the nation of people. So in Zechariah chapter 3, verse 1, it says, then he showed me Joshua. So Joshua is a very important name, right? For we know that the first Joshua, at least mentioned in the Torah, was Husha, right? Husha or Hosea. We know the O is not actually, ancient, but we know that that means salvation. Husha or Oshe, like my that's up here. Oshe, Husha, it actually means salvation, right? So what Moses did to Joshua, he put Yah's name in front of salvation to make it Yahusha, right? Yah's salvation. Yah is salvation, right? So that name is so important because Joshua also was the person that led the people into Israel, right? And if you think about the northern tribes, the last king was also, I think it was Hosea, that actually, or the book Hosea, is what actually led him out, right? As well. So salvation came and Yah's salvation left, right? And now Yahusha, Hamashiach, right? Yah's salvation is coming to set us in place forever. So it's very interesting. We start looking at the names, right? So, Yahusha, Joshua that actually came and fought the battle of Jericho, and the walls came tumbling down. And then, here it is in the southern tribe where Judah has been taken to Babylon, and now Yahusha, Joshua, is now leading them back to Yah's salvation, is leading them back to restore the temple. So, it's very important to understand some of the names that Yah has there, and even our own name. Yah has even given us names, and it's interesting when you even think about, the nature of people and stuff, and sometimes he gives us a new name for reasons as well. But it says, then he showed me Yahusha the high priest standing before the angel of Yahuwah, and Satan had to be there with him, right? Standing at his right hand to accuse him. So this man that's been called to bring in Yah's salvation has Satan right there accusing him, trying to bring him down. So a lot of times Yah has a great plan in place for his people to build up his nation, to do great things. And then he have, kind of like that cartoon that had the Satan over here, the devil over here, and the angel over here. Like, there's things that's trying to stop people from moving forward in the things that Yah has to do for us, plan for us, right? The reason why he purposed some of us, right? He didn't just, like I said before, he doesn't purpose just one man like a pastor to do everything, right? Even Joshua, we're going to see that he even had help, right? But he has given him that vision or set him in place to do a specific task to bring his people together and allow his glory to be shown. So maybe it's you that he wants you to be able to move in your community to do something great, but are you, listening to that? Allowing that Satan to accuse you, saying that, oh, you're not good enough, right? You're not smart enough. You don't know too much of the Bible, right? But what's stopping you from reading the Bible, right? Those things that stop us from doing the things that Yah has, called us to. You don't have enough time. Or like that woman said, oh, you got to worry about your career and working. Like when it comes to my career, do I automatically just say, okay, now my career is more important than the things of Yah? Like, wait a minute, maybe I need to have a revaluation of my career, or maybe there's certain parts of that ladder I might need to stop at in order to make sure I'm still successful, but still can do the things. I still have time to dedicate it and devote myself to Yah, right? So that should be more important, because as the economy gets worse, as things start happening, right? That because we know revelation has to happen one day. I keep telling people that. Sometimes people try to be like an ostrich and put their head in the sand, right? But you're still exposed, right? So we got to make sure that we are having our discernment, as Yah told us, Yahusha told us, to understanding the signs of the season. We won't know the day, but we know the season. We can tell something strange is going on, right? Even some people that I know that's older, a lot older, they'll say, I never seen like this happen. I never seen stuff like. So we know something strange is going on in our midst. They even talking about aliens coming down and all kind of craziness is coming. They talk about the war, right? People aren't even talking about what's happening right now with Qatar and Israel right now. You probably hear it after you hear all the other drama that's going on with the recent shooting and death of that man. I can't even remember his name. But, there's like a lot of distractions going on. A lot of stuff is happening under the scenes. People talking about 9/11 that happened, right? And you have other shootings that just recently happened as well that people are not even, it's kind of out of the news again, because so much stuff is happening that people are forgetting stuff, and it's hard to keep track of it all. But Yah has you in place for a reason. Every person has something that Yah wants to do through you. And the question is before you leave this earth, and have to stand before him, will you accomplish those things? So Satan's going to always be an adversary trying to get to stop. So here we can see in verse 3, it says, now Yahusha was clothed with filthy garments, right? So he wasn't worthy, right? He had sin, has iniquity, and standing before the angel. And verse 4, he spoke and said to those who were standing before him, saying, remove the filthy garments from him. And he said to them, see, I have taken your iniquity away from you, and will clothe you with festival robes. And then I said, then I said, let them put a clean turban on his head. So they put a clean turban on his head and clothed him with garments while the angel of Yahuwah was standing by him. Right. So Yah has, cleaned us up. That's salvation, right? Even for us as individuals, he has cleaned us up to do great things. And that's the reason why we are even called a kingdom of what? Of priests. Mamlekhet, Kohanim. We're just not regular people. Yah has called us to live a holy life as a nation of people, a holy nation, a royal nation of people, right? So we can't just live any kind of way because we're a sign, we're an ambassador of who Yah is, his presence on the earth and what Yahusha did also through us, right? So it says, verse 6, and the angel of Yahuwah admonished Joshua, saying, thus says Yahuwah of hosts, there goes that if you walk in my ways, and if you will perform my service, then you will also govern my house, and also have charge of my courts, and I will grant you free access among those who are standing here. Now listen, Joshua, the high priest, you and your friends who are sitting in front of you, indeed, they are men who are a symbol. For behold, I'm going to bring in my servant, the branch. For behold, the stone that I have set before Yahusha, on one stone are 7 eyes. And we talked about that in Bible study, the 7 spirits, it's on a stone, right, with 7 eyes as well. But it says, behold, I will engrave an inscription on it, declares Yahuwah of hosts, and I'll remove the iniquity of that land in one day. So Yah has plans for him, right? He's the one that does the cleaning, and he has, he said, I'm going to bring in my servant, the branch. So, he has a desire, and he's going to talk about a little bit more about the branch as well, but he has a plan for Joshua to do things, but he's not going to do it on his own. You even have these other men that's standing before him, right, to be a witness, and they're even basically propping him up and supporting him, putting a turban on his head to be what Yah is getting ready to, accomplish in his life and be what Yah has called him to be. All right. In verse 10, it says, in that day declares Yahuwah of hosts, every one of you will invite his neighbor to sit under his vine and under his fig tree. All right. So that was the prophecy of Joshua. And then later on, when he gets to Zechariah, if we go to the next one, that's when we start talking about those chariots, right? So first they were on the horse, and then they were actually supposed to be, the chariots had multiple horses, but they was the 4 spirits of the 4 horsemen, and each one of them had a different color, right? And they were supposed to go out and patrol the earth. We talked about that last week. So that's like verse 1 through 7. But as part of that same chapter, for the next slide, it talks about Joshua being crowned. Right? In verse 8, it says, then he cried out to me and spoke to me, saying, see, those who that are going to the land of the north have appeased my wrath in the land of the north. The word of Yahuwah also came to me, saying, take an offering from the exiles. So those people who are out, getting kicked out of the land of Jerusalem into Babylon, it says, from Heldai, Tobijah, and Jedediah, and you go the same day, and enter the house of Josiah, the son of Zephaniah, where they have arrived from Babylon, right, to meet them. Take silver and gold, make an ornament, a crown, and set it on the head of Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. So he's a descendant of the high priest. He has been cleaned up, has his turban on his head, and now he's actually getting this crown of royalty. So he's a royal and he's a priest, kingdom of priests, right? A kingdom of royal priests, a royal priesthood. So, very symbolic of a lot of who we're supposed to be. That holy nation, that cleaned up nation, right? He took off his clothes and gave him some new clothes, holy clothes, right? Anointed him to do great things. But are we doing those great things, right? Are those things just, lower down on our list of priorities, right? Of what he wants to do for the nation of his people and also for those who will receive him. How can he reach out to people unless he's reaching through people? Now, I know he can crack the sky open and do all kind of things, but he really wants to work through his people through the Ruach HaKodesh. But we got to be in tune with that as well in our jobs, in our situations, and all. I hope my computer doesn't restart because it said something about restart for some reason. But he talks about the holiness of us and what we need to do as ambassadors, as his children. That's the reason why he called Israel to be a sign unto the nations, right? He said, many of the nations of the earth will be blessed through us. But are we doing the things that he's called us to do? That's the reason why Yahushua was an Israelite. So if you're going to say the Israelites not important, then Yahushua's not important. We know he came through the Israelites for a reason, because that was what Yah wanted to establish upon the earth, right? So then that's what he talks about in verse 12. He says, then he say to him, thus says Yahuwah of hosts, behold, a man whose name is Branch, for he will branch out from where he is, and he will build the temple of Yahuwah. So he's called to build the temple. He's going to come out where he is. And where is he right now in your life? Where are you in the midst of your neighborhood, in your family, in your situation? Is he going to be able to take you and be able to use you to reach out to others, right? So we can see a lot of this symbolic symbolism even through Joshua, and how he's called to be a priest, and how he's called us to be a priest in order to change our communities and our atmosphere and where we are, right? So let me see. He will build. I lost my place. So I'll just read 13 again. It says, yes, it is he who will build the temple of Yahuwah, and he who will bear the honor and sit and rule on his throne. Thus he will be a priest on his throne. So, most time the king is on the throne, but this is a priest. And the council of peace will be between the two offices. And 14, how the crown will become a reminder in the temple of Yahuwah to Helam, Tobijah, Jedediah, and Hen, and the son of Zephaniah. Those who are far off will come and build the temple of Yahuwah. Then you will know that Yahuwah of hosts has sent me to you, and will take place if you completely, wait a minute, this says completely obey. How do you obey Yahuwah? How do you obey him without the rules, right? How do you please your mom and your daddy, right? Unless you clean the bathroom and told them what to do. So those are why the rules are so important that he has, because he's the one that's setting the plan. And we might not understand the full plan, but if we obey the parts that we do know, then he can bring other people, right? He set that line, right? The standards in place. And once we start doing, other people can also come and be a part of it, and we can teach those standards to other people as well, right? So that's why it's so important for us to understand and be obedient, right? Obey is the key piece. All right. So just to go into this real quick. Next slide. We have Solomon's temple. So this is the temple that got destroyed when they got kicked out of Israel and the southern tribe and sent to Babylon, right? So this is the first temple, and we can see the measurements. If you kind of look up in the top right-hand corner, you can see the American football field and how big Solomon Temples was in comparison to that, all right? That's going to be important. So next, this is what they call Ezekiel's temple, right? So look at the bottom where the American football field is, right? This is like 5, 6 football fields big, right? And a lot of people get caught up now talking about Ezekiel's temple a lot, right? Now I did this intentionally because it was a conversation that I had with one of my, people, Mishpachah, and it's important to understand this because a lot of people are talking about the third temple being built and caught up in the midst of where we are. And then there's this Ezekiel's temple. So, I want to make sure you understand in the midst of where we are and what's being, I think, improperly given to deceive people. There's a great deception that's supposed to come in, right? So next is Zerubbabel's temple. So this is Zerubbabel, Joshua. This is the temple that they came and ended up building like 516 BC during that time. So after they came back, so remember he said they're going to rebuild the temple, and this is Zerubbabel's temple. And Zerubbabel's temple later on during the time of King Herod, right? During the time of Yahushua, the Messiah, King Herod expanded that temple into what was the temple that was in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament. So the next slide is showing that expanded temple, Herod's temple, and you can see the size of a football field is about 4, measures long. And that little place where it says holy place without the women's of the courtyard, that was Zerubbabel's temple, and Herod expanded it, right, into a more elegant temple there. Before that one was destroyed in 70 AD and sent our people throughout, Africa, Egypt, Spain, and Portugal, all the places we should said that our people got taken away from and, ran to Africa and got sent to America. So next slide, this is a comparison of all the temples. So you can see a large difference of what these temples were, right? So Solomon's temple, Even has the court of tabernacle. Even when they were building the tabernacle and they were taking it through the desert, you can see how the temple was just growing, right? But Ezekiel's temple has never been built. And it's important to understand, when did Ezekiel's temple get rebuilt versus Zerubbabel's temple, who we just talked about. And I don't think Ezekiel's temple is going to be rebuilt. And this is the reason why. I'm just going through. I know we went through this in Hanukkah, but I know sometimes, there's so many different doctrines that's going out right now that I want to go ahead and just deal with some as part of this lesson. So next, and these is the reason why. So Ezekiel's temple, he had a vision of a temple to be built, and it was huge. And it also depended on what kind of cubit measure, because they said there's 2 different cubit measures. But nevertheless, this is a huge temple, right? But there was 3 things that the Israelites, that had to be done, right? Or that was done in reference to this temple. So number 1, the Israelites had to repent before the temple was built, which I never saw any signs that they ever did, right? So we'll see something about that. And number 2, Ezekiel was in the time of the Babylonian exile before the second temple was built. So Ezekiel was in the same time that Zerubbabel was out there. Not Zerubbabel, Zechariah was up there, right? Prophesying about the temple rebuilt. Ezekiel was prophesying about this temple to be rebuilt. But we know that the temple of Zerubbabel was the one that was rebuilt, right? So Ezekiel temple would have to skip that one and go to the next one. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. And then the third thing is, if there is a third temple, then who is the prince? There's a prince that's supposed to be there, and he was supposed to offer offering for his own sins, and he also has descendants, has children that's going to descend from him, which we know that Yahusha didn't have children. And why would Yahusha offer up a sacrifice for his own sin when he was sinless, right? So just want to put that out. So next, I'll just show you some of these scriptures just from a standpoint of understanding. So Ezekiel 43, it says in verse 10, as for you, well, I'll start from verse 9. Now let them put away their harlotry. We know they never did. And the corpses of their kings far from me, and I will dwell among them forever. We know Yahusha, after the got sent to Babylon, Yahuwah, he never dwelt with them forever, right? He's still trying to come and tabernacle with us. In verse 10, it says, and as for you, son of man, describe the temple to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the plan. And this is the verse that's important to me, at least. 11, if, that's the condition, if they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the design of the house, its structures, its exits and entrances, all its design, all its statutes, and all its laws, and write in their sight, so they may observe its whole design and all that its statutes, and do them, right? So they never did this, right? Because they never were ashamed. So now with us, are we ashamed? Now that we know we are Israelites, need to go back to the land, that's where I'm bringing it back to. Are we ashamed? Because y'all had a great temple to be built by them, right? And he said he wants his presence to be dwell among them forever, but that didn't happen. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't think Ezekiel's temple never got built. And then the next slide talks about, the timeline. So like I was saying, during the time of, Ezekiel, that's when Daniel was written. When there, you see Zephaniah even is before even Ezekiel and Daniel in the timeline. You see Habakkuk right there around 600 BC. You see Jeremiah, all them, they're in captivity during that time before Zerubbabel or Joshua's temple is even built, right? So, we know that Ezekiel also had a vision of a temple, and his temple was not the same one that was built, at least based upon what we're told through archaeology. It was not the same one built by Zerubbabel and Joshua. So for Zerubbabel's temple to be built, that would mean Ezekiel's temple would have to skip Zerubbabel's temple, and that's a problem too. So you can't just skip Zerubbabel's temple when neither one of them has been created. So that's important. And then, this is the offering. The next slide, it actually talks about how this prince was supposed to offer burnt offerings. And you can see in verse 17 that I have highlighted in red, it says, prince part to provide the burnt offerings, and he shall provide the sin offerings to make atonement. Okay, so, atonement to the land, that sounds okay. Verse 21, it says, in the first month, the 14th day of the month, you shall have a Passover, right? And verse 22, and the prince shall provide for himself, right, and all the people of a land a bull for a sin offering. Yahusha didn't sin, so why would he provide an offering for himself, a sin offering? So that's controversial for me there. So that's one of the reasons why I don't think that this temple was supposed to be built. That was skipped over because the people weren't ashamed of what they have done. And then it talks about a prince that has a sin. And then the next slide, it even talks about how gifts will be inheritance to his sons, right? Shall belong to his sons, right? And he shall give sons inheritance for his own possession. So we know that Yeshua didn't have any children, all right? So that's very important to understand because after the Zerubbabel temple was basically there, right? And that one turned to Herod's temple, as I said, and then that one got crushed. The next temple, next slide, is the one that we talked about before. It's the Antichrist temple, right? So people talking about building the third temple, you got to know about what's going on behind the scenes. There's a lot going on behind the scenes right now. Reason some people don't even know they burnt red heifers because they said they had to burn these red heifers to give these ashes to their Messiah who's living on earth right now, that they say he's living now. And they're going to, present these ashes to him in order to build the third temple. And they got signs all through like Jerusalem. I had a cousin in New York, told me how they're putting up signs about the third temple in New York now. And we know that that is a temple. And based on 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, it says in verse 4 that so that he takes his seat in the temple of Yah, displaying himself as being Yah. So we know that he's basically going to claim himself as God, right? So that this is the verse 7 is this mystery of lawlessness is already at work way back in that day. And so only he who restrains them now will do so until he is taken out of the way. So only thing that's restraining them is Yahusha, right? Is stopping that from moving forward. It's just his, Yah's trying to get people to call them to repentance before that door closes, right? So then after that, the next tabernacle, we talk about this during Sukkot as well, is the tabernacle of David. So the tabernacle of David and the third temple is not the same thing, right? And people need to understand that from a biblical standpoint. I'm just covering it, glossing over it right now, but it's just to kind of get you interested and to read up on this. But there's in Amos, it talks about how in that day I will, chapter 9, verse 11, it says, in that day I will raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen. So remember, David built a tabernacle and he put the Ark of the Covenant in there. And then when Solomon built the temple, he took the tabernacle and he put it within the in the temple, right? But the tabernacle of David is still there, right? It was never got destroyed. It's still there. So that's what we talk about Telluride and some of the stuff that we talked about in the past. But we can see it was brought up again in Acts. So all that time had went forward, and now during the time after Yahushua descended, they're still quoting the same scripture, right? After this, I will return and will build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up. So we know that Yahushua, the next time it comes back, right? That's where he's going to come and dwell, because in Isaiah 16 verse 5 says, and in mercy shall the throne be established, and he shall sit upon it in truth and in the tabernacle of David, not Mount Moriah, but the tabernacle of David, judging, seeking judgment, and hasting in righteousness. And then after we know that Yahushua comes down, the millennium reign, and he's in the tabernacle, we know, in the New Jerusalem, right? So next slide, it actually talks about how he wants to, Revelation 21 talks about how Yah wants to tabernacle, right? Behold, the tabernacle of Yah is with men. He wants to tabernacle with us. That's why we're doing Sukkot, right? That's why it's so important. So we can basically start making these connections, right? And these comparisons. And he will dwell with them. He's going to tabernacle with us. But in Revelation 21, we can see in verse 22, and it says, I saw no temple therein, for Yahuwah Almighty and the Lamb are the temple of it. So in that temple, there is no tabernacle. So where's this Ezekiel temple? When should that be built, right? So that's the reason why I think, the people missed out on that temple. And but they're using it a lot to confuse people. And I think that's going to be some of the trickery to get them to worship this false anti-Christ Messiah. That's, sounds like it's very close to happening, even in our lifetime. All right, so going back to the story, though, and to end, I know I'm trying to do only a couple more minutes and then we can stop. But the next slide talks about now Haggai. People say different words, so I'm just say Haggai. So during his time was when they actually were about to build the temple. So Zechariah was prophesied that he would build the temple, Joshua, right? That he would build the temple. Now they're actually getting ready to build it. They've been called forth to build it. So King Darius of Persia basically told them they can go back and build it. And we can see there in Haggai chapter 1, verse 1, it says, in the second year of Darius the king, on the first day of the 6th month, the word of Yahuwah came by the prophet Haggai of Zerubbabel to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. So we can see there Joshua again, right? But now he's with Zerubbabel, who is the governor of Judah. So Judah is that southern part that we were talking about before, right? The south part of Israel. And it says in verse 2, thus says Yahuwah of hosts, this people say, the time has not come, even the time for the house of Yahuwah to be rebuilt. Then the word of Yahuwah came to Haggai the prophet, saying, is it time for you yourselves to dwell in your paneled houses while this house lies desolate? Now, therefore, thus says Yahuwah of hosts, consider your ways. So they were saying that their life and the things that they're doing, their own house, was more important than building the things of Yah, the temple. Right? So they basically, like the young lady was talking about earlier, she was so caught up in her own life, she forgot to hold to the holiness. And that's the reason, one of the reasons why we do the Shabbat, right? It's a time to take rest, to take a break, to identify and glorify Yah, to show that he's the creator, right? That he created this day for us to acknowledge him. So that's the reason why the Shabbat is so important, because it's kind of like a force, at first especially, for you to keep the Shabbat, to recognize him. But hopefully, it says eventually you'll delight in it, right? You look forward to it, which I do now. Before I didn't know how to do it, but now I delight in it because I know it's a time that I'm setting apart to glorify him. So same thing in our life, that long life that we live in the last day of our life, right? 6 days a week you work, and the last day is a day of rest, that we're going to rest into him once we live this life, in this world, that we're going to rest in him in the end, right? The 7th day, the last day, all right? So it's also significant of our life. So it's so important for us to keep this, because then it gives a better understanding of what, Yah is trying to do. And he's trying to make himself, not trying to make himself, he's trying to tell us how relevant he is. It's not like he's trying to plead with us and say, hey, he has, but it's not, he's the creator. He's the one in charge, not us. And that's what true Satanism is to say that we're God, right? They don't even care if you don't worship, if you don't worship Lucifer or nothing like that. They just want you to make yourself God and put you at the forefront, right, of your life, versus putting Yah in the forefront of your life, and right, and living according to his ways, living according to his will. So, that's the whole thing. Do as thou wilt, right? Is the whole of the law, right? So that's one of the Masonic, or some people say Illuminati type of stuff. Jay-Z had in his shirt, do as thou wilt, right? Saying, do your thing, do what you want to do. All those songs that we heard, YOLO, you only live once. It's no more about, thinking about your relationship with Yah, but thinking about your own life. Focus on yourself, right? Same thing that Eve did when she bit the fruit, right? That she said she couldn't touch the tree, and Satan kept on talking to him, just like he was standing beside Joshua, accusing him, right, of the sin. Satan was there talking to Eve, saying, hey, you sure you're not supposed to do that? You'll eat it. Maybe you'll be a god. You'll be God like yourself. You don't have to worry about what he said. You can control your own life, control your own destiny. Pick what you want to do instead of what Yah wants you to do, right? So that's that same type of thing. But here they're doing the same thing. They're building their own house. They're not worried about the things of Yah. And that's how we get in our life. We get so caught up in life, especially now. I think we live in a narcissistic society where we just think about ourselves, don't think about the people beside us. As we talked about that road design, right? He said, how can you hold yourself from your own flesh? Like, hide yourself from your own people. Go feed the poor. Help those people that's in need, right? And that's what we should be doing as Israelites, right? But we're not doing, some of us are not doing that. Some of us just like, oh, I'm an Israelite. Hey, I'm good. I'm an Israelite, right? I'm saved. Yes, I can go in my cave and do what I want to do. But Yah has called us to do greater things, just like he did with Joshua the priest. He gave him new robe, put a turban on his head, gave him a crown, right? Because now he's royalty, and royal is supposed to take care of their people, right? Supposed to take care of the things of Yah, supposed to be ambassadors, supposed to be priests, those that are dedicated their life to serving Yah in a way that is pleasing and calling to, the way that he wants us to do it. And the question is, are we doing that now? Now that we woke up, now that we know we the people, is it just a fad? Is it just a good knowledge, academia to give us more knowledge in our head? Or is that going to move to our heart, to our ruach, in order to serve him? All right, so then we can see in verse 6, it says, you have sown much, but harvest little. You eat, but there's not enough to be satisfied. You drink, but there is not enough to become drunk. You put on clothing, but no one is warm enough. And he who earns wages to put into a purse with holes. Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, consider your ways. So he says, look, even though you're out there trying to do that, you're never making ends meet. There's always an issue. There's always something that's stopping you from accomplishing what you want to accomplish because of your ways. Basically, because you put the things that Yah on hold to focus on your own life, right? So next slide. In verse 8, it says, go up to the mountains and bring wood and rebuild the temple, that I may be pleased with it and be glorified, says Yahuwah. You look for much, but behold, it comes to little. When you bring it home, I will blow it away. So now he said he's going to do it. Like, it's not just by Sans and Satan, right? Like, he's going to blow because you're not doing it. He's going to say, why? Verse 9, why, declares Yahuwah of hosts, because of my house which lies desolate, while each of you runs to his own house. Therefore, because of you, the sky has withheld its dew, and the earth has withheld its produce. I called for a drought on the land, on the mountains, on the grain, on the new wine, on the oil, on what the ground produces, on men, on cattle, and on all the labor of your hands. So we like wondering why we as a people can't keep on going forward. It's because we haven't acknowledged him, right? Who is our God, our Elohim, our El, right? He is ours, but yet we ignore him. We've been still trying to go through, worry more about politics, worry more about what's going on in our society, and not worried about our relationship with him, right? And what he wants to do through our people. And he said, if we do that, if we align ourselves with him, then there will be a blessing. That's Deuteronomy 28. Everybody just talks about the curses of Deuteronomy 28, but there's blessings. He said, if you do this, then you will be blessed. And we have not yet as individuals, right? Because in order for us to do something collectively, we have to first start with us, with me, with I, right? I can turn to we, right? Me can turn to we, and that but until I do my part, how can we expect us to come together as a nation, right? Until you do your part, how can we come together and do the things that Yah has called us to do? All right, in verse 12, then Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua, the son of I don't know why I'm having a problem with that. Joazak, the high priest, with all the remnant of the people. The remnant of the people was with him now. So it won't just Zerubbabel and Joshua, it's also the remnant of the people. Obeyed the voice of Yahuwah, their El, and the words of Haggai the prophet, as Yahuwah, their Yah, had sent them. And the people were showed reverence for Yahuwah. So we got to show him reverence. We got to actually acknowledge him in our life, not just saying I'm an Israelite, like living holy, living righteous, right? Coming out, being a set apart people that he's called us to be. And then we can see the blessings that's going to come, because that's what's going to protect us. A lot of people think, what's going to protect our people now? I still keep asking people that. Who's our leaders, right? Now they're talking about these new laws that, you can be detained just because you look like a foreigner. What does a foreigner look like in a nation that is a melting pot of all different kind of nations, right? So there you're going to use that to single out our people again, right? And you can be detained. If you act out, if you risk, they might take it to another level like they always been doing. So what's going to protect us other than Yah? And that's that Song of Solomon, Song of Moses. I keep telling people, Deuteronomy 32, he said, hey, now you want to turn to me. Why don't you go serve your old gods? Go to your frat gods. Go to your god of Sol Invictus, right? Christmas and Easter, Istra, right? Go to those gods. Serve them. Go ask them to help you. Like, you have never acknowledged me. Now you want to come acknowledge me and look for help in the time of your need. But now, like he was saying here in the building of the temple, you just act like you didn't reverence me. You act like it wasn't important. And what about in your life? What are the things that we as individuals are saying, hey, I'm gonna put that on the back burner? And that's why I tell people, go ahead and put your foot on the gas, right? When it comes to your relationship to Yah, because when you do that, there's blessings in store, and you're basically doing what he's called you to do as a person, right? I can't tell you what he's called you to do. You got to seek Yah out for yourself, and it's not based upon what you want to do in your head that you basically formalize, right? It's what he truly wants you to do until you basically humble yourself with fasting and prayer. How do you know exactly what he wants you to do? And that's the part of this relationship, right? This journey that we're on right now is being his people, because he's calling us, right? He's calling us forth, but we got to respond to that call in action and not just in words, right? So in verse 14 it says, so Yahuwah stirred up the spirit, right? Yahuwah will stir up your spirit once you connect with the fasting, the prayer, acting like you're devoted, your dedication. Do what you already know to do. People are like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be calling. What did he tell you to do already? Taking care of people that's in need, helping the elders, helping the widows, helping the orphans. Do those things first, right? Pray, right? Fast, read your word, and then he'll start opening up other things. But until you do those things, until you keep the Shabbat, keep the feast days, right? The stuff that we know to do, then how can he move even further in your life, right? To do those other things, right? So that's that stirring of the spirit. And he didn't only stir up, it says, the spirit of Zerubbabel and the spirit of Joshua, but he stirred up the spirit of all the remnant of the people. And what did they do? And they came and worked on the house of Yahuwah of hosts, their El, right? So, that's why it's so important for us to understand what Yah wants to do and the things, to line up with him, because he's going to do great things, right? So we got to make sure that we align with him. And just for the sake of time, go to 2 slides down. Yeah, that one. So basically he talks about, he asked 2 questions, saying that if a meat is holy, right, something, and it touches somebody or touches something, will it make that other thing become holy as well? And the priest said no. But he said, what happens if the food is unclean from corpse and touches something? Will it become unclean? And he said yes. So it's saying that the uncleanness of somebody couldn't affect somebody else, right? And the holiness of somebody is not just going to be transmitted just because that thing had to be set apart as well by Yah. So in verse 15, he says, before one stone was placed, so before they even built the temple, that he was basically giving it to them, right? They'll come out with 10 measures, and it says they came out with 20 measures, and there will only be 10 that would be returned, right? He came out with 50, and there will only be 20 returned from the 50. So Yah was basically against them. He said, I smote you, verse 17, and every work of your hands with a blasting wind, with mildew and hail, yet you did not come back to me. So he said he did this to get our attention, right? So we as a people, as African-American Israelites, he's doing this to get our attention. But when will we turn, right? And verse 18 says, do consider from this day onward, right? And that's when they start basically building the temple. And he says, is there now seed still in the barn? Even including the vine, the fig tree, the pomegranate, all this stuff that was supposed to be in the bed. He said from that day when they basically turned their head to do what they were supposed to do, he ended up blessing them. And that's the thing about this awakening. It's like we woke up, but we got to walk in it, right? We got to be devoted to the thing. That's what he's calling us to do. It's just not waking up. He's calling us to do it. And then he spoke to him again, and he said in that prophecy in verse 21, he says, I'm going to shake the heavens and the earth. I will overthrow the thrones of kingdoms and destroy the power of kingdoms of the nations. And I will overthrow the chariots of their riders. The horse and the riders will go down, and everyone by the sword of another. And on that day, declares Yahuwah of hosts, I will take Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, my servant, and declares Yahuwah, and I'll make you a signet ring, for I have chosen you. So now he's even having promises for Zerubbabel. First it was the promises for Joshua, right? Yahusha, the high priest, and now he's blessing even Zerubbabel, the governor, and the people that's in their midst. So it's just so important for us to understand those things that Yah has called us to do. And as we just continue to go, next 2 slides just talking about us. So next slide, 1 Corinthians says that we're the temple, right? Your body is a temple of the Holy of the Ruach HaKodesh who is in you. You're the temple. His presence is in us, right? So we're not supposed to be doing those immoral things anymore, right? We need to separate from our sins, right? Because Yah has bought us. He has basically paid the price. Yahusha has bought us through his death on the cross, that when he died, he bought us, right? And he wants to restore us. And next slide, that's the reason why we need to separate ourselves. So that's 2 Corinthians 6:14. Do not be bound together with unbelievers, right? For what partnership have righteousness and lawlessness, or what right fellowship has light with darkness, right? And then he goes on later on and says, we are the temple of the living Yah. We shouldn't be involved in idols or involved in those things with unbeliever, right? He said he wants to dwell in us, right? And walk among us, just like that tabernacle. He wants to walk among us. He wants to be with us. He wants to tabernacle with us. And he wants to be our God, our Yah, right? And he's calling us to be his people. So there's not just his action, but our action in response to that. And he wants us to come out of that midst, just like in Babylon, right? He told them to come out of Babylon. And here in 2 Corinthians, he says, therefore, come out from their midst and be separate, says Yahuwah, and do not touch what is unclean. So that's even talking about, I think, Isaiah 52, when he says, come out of there, because they were priests and not supposed to touch any unclean thing, right? That come out, and he said, you won't believe in haste, talking about the second gathering as well. And he will welcome us. He wants to be a father to us, right? Like I said, that father-son road, that parenting road, got rules to get us to where we're going. And we should be sons and daughters to him. Hallelujah. All right. So that's all that I have for today. But it's so important for us to understand our role and what he wants us to do during this time, because that's what prophecy is all about, right? Like, what's the use of all this stuff, to talk about all this stuff and yet not have not try to fulfill the prophecy that he's called us to be, by being loving, to do the things that's right, to glorify his name, right? So it's so important for that as well. All right, so let's see if we got any questions. Let's see. All right, St. Thomas. Oh, okay, talking about the stuff that we talked about. Some of the, I didn't even make. Oh, St. Thomas. Oh, St. Thomas was also, St. Thomas was in that. There's a St. Thomas in Africa. So it's important to understand the name of the St. Thomas that's in down in the Caribbeans with the St. Thomas over in Africa, because all those Jews were taken to St. Thomas over in St. Thomas and Principe, and they were taken over to the Caribbeans. So I wonder if there's some relations there as well, right? So yes, I'm thankful for the laws. Yep, it helps us stand apart. Praise y'all. I'm glad it was a good lesson to you, and hopefully your husband will be able to listen and give any feedback as well. Like, we are open to questions for anybody who has some. Can you do a study on the correct way to fast? Okay, we'll talk about that as well. Yeah, maybe we do that in a Bible study or something as well. Talk about some of that and get some of those questions as well. So hopefully this was helpful to you. With that said, let us have prayer, since we don't have any other questions. Yeah, I'm sorry, trying to make sure this camera is working right. All right, let us pray. Dear Yah, we ask you to help us to be the set apart people. Help us to do the things you called us to do. We know there's a lot of stuff that's happening, but help us to not be people who are lacking patience, right? A lot of things are getting us to speed up, to cut things short, to just give a short tweet. Two sentences is what people want today. But we know that you want to commune with us and conversate with us. So help us to set the appropriate time to be at your feet, to glorify your name, to listen to you, to help others to get an understanding, to be dedicated, be those priests that have set forth our life to be a vessel to be used by you. We ask you for favor. We thank you for your son who died for our sin. Thank you, Yahusha, for going paying the price to doing your Father's will versus doing your will. And help us to do the same through the Ruach HaKodesh. Empower us to be your people, and help us allow your Ruach to come within us and to be obedient to the things that you have for us, to make us those set apart people. We love you so much. When you ask you for blessings on our families and our friends, those who are lack of understanding, who don't know what's happening, please help them to get that ruach, that wisdom, that discernment, to open up their minds as you did even with Solomon, to give him the things that he was supposed to do, to be faithful as a young man, to be a king, to rule his people. But we ask you to just give us understanding so we can be effective in our communities, in our families and our jobs. And we know that you will bless us with the blessings that we need to move forward. And we just thank you for all, appreciate already the blessings that you have given us today to even be able to have computers and cell phones where our forefathers were in slavery without lacking, dealing with, just the daily bread. And you have given us a surplus in a lot of the places that we are. And even if we're lacking compared to others, we're never lacking from where we have came from, and how you can continue to move us forward to be that kingdom of priests, that royal priesthood. We thank you and we praise you. Heal those that are sick that's among us. Strengthen those who are lost and confused, and give us light so we can allow your light to shine to us, even to the blind. In Yahushua's name we pray. Hallelujah. Amen. Thank you, Yah. We praise you. Hallelujah.